I still remember the exact moment my phone showed me the house, and then refused to show it again. It was a normal night, nothing special. I was scrolling through cheap property listings because rent in my area had gone up again, and I couldn't afford another month in my old place. My eyes were tired, my mind half asleep, when a listing popped up that made me stop scrolling. It didn't look unusual at first. Just a house, 2 floors, old brick exterior, cheap price. Too cheap. But the strange thing wasn't the price. It was the address. Because I live in that neighborhood, I know every street, every corner, every building. And this address doesn't exist. Still, I tapped on it. The photos loaded slowly, like the internet itself didn't want to show them. A narrow street, quiet, empty, trees leaning too far over the road like they were watching something. Then the house. It looked almost normal, but something in it felt wrong, like my brain couldn't agree with my eyes. The windows were slightly too dark. The front door looked a little too low, like it was sinking into the ground, and the house number above it kept shifting in my vision. 17, no, 71, no, something else. I blinked and the listing refreshed. Suddenly, it was gone. I searched again. Nothing. Not even the search history showed it. That should have been the end of it. But the address stayed in my mind like a splinter. The next morning, I decided to check it in person. I told myself it was just a glitch, maybe a fake listing, maybe someone playing around, but deep down I already knew I was going to go. The street should have taken me 10 minutes to reach. It took almost 40, because every turn I made felt slightly wrong, like the city was rearranging itself in small ways when I wasn't looking directly at it. When I finally arrived, I stopped walking. The street was there, but it felt empty in a way I can't explain. No cars, no dogs barking, no radio sounds from open windows. Just silence, and houses that looked too still. Like they weren't being lived in, like they were waiting. I checked the address again on my phone. Still nothing. No signal for the listing. No map pin, just blank space. But I was standing right there, and I could see it. The house, it was real. Same brick walls, same slightly tilted roof, same dark windows. And yet, something had changed since the photos. It looked older in real life, like time had been heavier on it than on everything around it. I stepped closer. That's when I noticed something strange. The neighbors, 2 houses beside it. Their curtains moved slightly. Not like wind, like people watching. But no one came outside. No one waved. No one asked what I was doing. They just stayed hidden. I walked up the path leading to the house. Each step felt louder than it should have been. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Like the ground was too dry, too brittle. There was a small mailbox near the gate. No name, just a number plate. And I swear to you, the number kept changing every time I looked away. I opened the gate. It didn't creak. It sighed, like it was tired of being opened. The front door was already slightly open. That should have been my first warning. But I kept going. Inside smelled like old wood and something faintly metallic, like coins left in water too long. The air felt heavier than outside, thicker. I stepped in, and the door closed behind me. Not slammed, just closed, softly, like it had always been waiting for that moment. I turned quickly. The handle didn't move. I tried it again. Locked. Of course it was locked. I told myself to stay calm. This was just a house. Just an old house. But then I noticed something on the wall near the entrance. A frame. Empty. Not broken, not dusty. just empty, like something had been removed recently. I walked deeper inside. The hallway stretched longer than it looked from outside. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. The second thing was the sound. A faint dragging noise upstairs. Slow, careful, like someone was walking without wanting to be heard. I stopped breathing for a second. Then it stopped too. Silence returned. Too quickly. I looked up the stairs. They were narrow, steep, old wooden steps that looked like they had been walked on too many times. I took one step, then another, and that's when my phone vibrated. No signal, just a single notification. A new listing alert. My hands went cold when I saw it. Same house, same address, but now the listing had changed. It had my name on it, as the contact. I stared at it, thinking it was some kind of glitch. But then I heard something behind me. A soft breath, right at the bottom of the stairs. I turned. Nothing, but the air felt different now. Like I wasn't alone anymore. I forced myself upstairs. Each step creaked, but the sound felt delayed, like the house was echoing my movements too late. The second floor hallway was long, too long. Doors lined both sides, all slightly open. Every single one. I walked slowly, checking each room. Empty, empty, empty. But every room felt recently used. A cup with fresh liquid. A chair slightly moved. A bed with a dip in the mattress, like someone had just stood up. Then I reached the last room. The door was closed. I don't know why, but I felt like I shouldn't open it. That feeling was strong, like something inside me was trying to stop me. But I still opened it. The room was empty, except for one thing. A camera, pointed directly at the door. Recording. Red light blinking slowly. I stepped back immediately. And that's when I heard it again. Footsteps. Above me. But there was no third floor. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. I looked up at the ceiling. The footsteps continued. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone walking in circles above my head. Then my phone buzzed again. Another notification. This time a document. A purchase agreement. Already signed. My signature. Perfectly matched. Even the shaky way I write my name was there. My throat went dry. Because I didn't sign anything. I swear I didn't. The footsteps above stopped. And for the first time, I heard a voice. Soft. Right behind me. Not angry. Not loud. Just calm. It's almost done. I turned instantly. No one there. But the air felt closer now. Like the room had shrunk. My phone screen flickered. And the map app opened on its own. The house was now marked as home. My knees felt weak. I backed toward the stairs. But the hallway behind me was different now. Longer. Deeper. Like it was stretching. And the rooms I had checked were no longer open. All doors were closed. All of them. Except one. At the very end. Slowly, it started to open by itself. And from inside, I heard something drag across the floor. Not fast. Not violent. Just patient. Like it had all the time in the world. I should have run. But I didn't. Because something inside me felt strangely familiar with this place. Like I had been here before. Like I was supposed to be here. And as I stood there, staring at that slowly opening door, I noticed something on the wall beside me. A framed photo. I don't remember it being there. In it was the house, fresh, new, lived in, and standing in front of it was me, smiling, but I don't remember taking that picture. The door at the end of the hall opened fully now, and a soft voice came again, closer this time. Welcome home. The lights flickered once, and then stayed on, but I was no longer sure if I was the one visiting the house, or if the house had finally finished visiting me. The first thing I noticed was that the hallway was longer than yesterday. I stood there in the same house in the same spot, but something didn't match. My mind kept trying to fix it, like a broken image refusing to load properly. The front door was behind me, locked. The stairs were ahead, but the space between them felt stretched, like the house was breathing. Slow, deeper, alive. I told myself I was just tired. That fear was messing with my perception. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A picture frame on the wall. It wasn't there before. I walked closer slowly, like the floor might react if I moved too fast. Inside the frame was a hallway, exactly like the one I was standing in. But in the photo, there was a door where there shouldn't be one. I turned my head. That door didn't exist in real life. At least it didn't yesterday. I don't know why I said yesterday. It felt like I had been here longer than that. My phone was still in my hand. No signal, no network, just a dead screen reflecting my face. And I looked tired. More tired than I remembered being. I stepped forward. The hallway creaked under my weight. Every step echoed too softly, like the sound was being absorbed instead of reflected. The air felt heavier now. Not dusty, intentional, like the house was paying attention. I reached the stairs and looked up. The second floor looked normal from here, but something about it felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Not broken, not abandoned, just rearranged. I started climbing, step by step. The wood didn't creak like before. It felt damp now, like it had been recently touched. When I reached the top, I stopped, because the hallway upstairs was not the same hallway. It was similar, but shifted. The first door on the left was gone. In its place was a wall. Smooth, clean, fresh paint. I blinked hard. That shouldn't be possible. I walked forward slowly, touching the wall. It was real. Solid. Cold. My fingers left no mark. Behind me, the staircase creaked once. I turned fast. Nothing there. But the sound had come from below, like someone had just stepped onto the stairs after me. I swallowed hard and kept moving. Second door on the right. It was there, but slightly open. I don't remember it being open yesterday. I pushed it gently. The room inside looked like a bedroom, but it wasn't mine. The bed was neatly made. Too neat, like no one had ever slept in it. There were clothes folded on the chair. Not random clothes. Uniforms. Old ones. The kind you don't see anymore. I stepped inside without thinking. The air changed immediately. Colder. Still, like sound didn't travel properly here. And that's when I noticed something on the wall. A calendar. But the dates were wrong. The month was correct, but the days were repeating. Every square had the same number written over and over, like someone was stuck rewriting time. My throat tightened. I turned back toward the door. It was still open, but now it looked smaller, like the room had grown slightly around it. I left quickly, too quickly, and as soon as I stepped into the hallway again, I heard it. A soft click. Behind me. The door had closed on its own. Slowly, carefully, like it didn't want to be noticed. I didn't turn back. I kept walking, but now the hallway felt longer. Not metaphorically, physically longer. I counted the doors. There were 6 yesterday. Now there were 8. I stopped walking. My breath got shallow. I looked back. The door I had just come out of wasn't the same one anymore. It had shifted one space to the left. I blinked again. It didn't move this time, but I knew it had moved. I could feel it, like the house was correcting itself whenever I wasn't looking directly at it. A soft sound came from ahead, like something sliding across wood. Slow, patient. I walked toward it. Each step felt like I was being watched. The sound stopped the moment I reached the middle of the hallway. Silence again. Too clean. I turned to the next door. It was slightly open. Inside was a bathroom, but the mirror was covered with paper. Not broken. Covered, like someone didn't want it used. I stepped closer. The paper had writing on it, but not normal writing. It looked like names, dozens of them, written over each other. Some faded, some fresh, and in the center, one name stood out. Mine, written darker than the rest. I touched the paper. It felt warm. That's when the light flickered once. Just once. And in that single moment of darkness, I heard something whisper my name. Right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But the hallway felt different again. Now the doors were all slightly open. All of them. At the same angle. Perfectly synchronized. Like they had agreed to move at the same time. My heart started pounding. I walked backward slowly, trying not to make noise. The house didn't like sudden movement. I was sure of it now, because every time I moved too fast, something changed. The hallway creaked again, but not from below. From above. I looked up instinctively. The ceiling looked normal, but I swear I saw a shadow pass across it, like someone walking just above me. But there was no attic. There was no second level above this part of the house. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. I forced myself to keep moving, one step at a time. Then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The doors weren't just open. They were showing different rooms than before. I looked into one. It wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was a kitchen. But I hadn't seen a kitchen upstairs before. Another door showed a staircase going down. A staircase that didn't exist in the house layout I saw yesterday. The house wasn't just changing. It was rewriting itself. I backed away slowly. And that's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway. A door I hadn't seen before. Completely new. Solid wood. No handle. Just a thin, vertical line in the center. Like it was sealed shut on purpose. And something about it felt final. Like everything in this house was leading to it. My phone suddenly vibrated again. I almost dropped it. A new notification. No sender. Just text. It said, "Don't geo closer." I stared at it. My mouth went dry. I looked up. The hallway behind me was gone. Not blocked. Gone. Just replaced with a blank wall. No exit. No stairs. No doors. Only the sealed door at the end. And I realized something that made my chest tighten painfully. I wasn't walking deeper into the house anymore. The house had finished closing behind me. Slowly, carefully, like a mouth sealing shut. And now, I was standing inside whatever it had decided I was meant to be inside. The lights flickered once more, and every door in the hallway clicked shut at the same time. Except the last one, the sealed door. It started to tremble, like something on the other side had finally noticed I was here. And then very softly, from inside the walls, I heard footsteps again. But this time, they were walking toward me. The moment I realized I wasn't alone was when I heard the dishes move in the kitchen. But I hadn't been in the kitchen for 10 minutes. I froze in the hallway. No footsteps, no voices, just that soft, careful clink like a spoon being set down too gently. My throat tightened, because I was sure of one thing now. This house wasn't empty. It was occupied, just not in a way I could see clearly. I stepped forward slowly, forcing my feet to move even when every instinct told me not to. The hallway felt different again, subtly, like the air had been rearranged. The same air, but arranged around something I couldn't see. I reached the kitchen doorway, stopped, listened. Nothing. Then again, a faint scraping sound from inside the cabinet. Not loud, not sudden, just patient, like someone trying not to be heard. I pushed the door open. The kitchen looked normal at first. Too normal. That was the problem. Clean counter, old stove, wooden table in the center. But something was wrong with the stillness. It felt staged, like a photo pretending to be real life. I stepped inside anyway. My shoes made no sound on the floor. That was the second thing I noticed. No echo, no weight, like the kitchen was absorbing me. I looked at the sink. There was water inside. Fresh water, still moving slightly, like something had just turned it off seconds ago. My pulse picked up, because I hadn't turned on anything, and I hadn't seen anyone. I moved closer. The water slowed, then stopped, as if it noticed me. That's when I saw the plates. 3 plates, on the counter, perfectly arranged, not dusty, not old, used. One had a faint smear of sauce. Another had a half-eaten piece of bread. The third had nothing, but a fork placed neatly beside it. I backed away slowly. My mind started searching for logic. Maybe squatters, maybe someone sneaking in, maybe. But even I didn't believe it, because everything looked maintained. Not abandoned, not broken, lived in. I turned toward the hallway again, and stopped instantly, because I heard a child laugh. Very soft, very close, from behind the kitchen wall. I turned sharply. Nothing there, just tiles, but the laugh stayed in my ears like a stain. Then another sound. Footsteps, small ones, running across a wooden floor above me. But I had checked the structure yesterday. There was no second floor above the kitchen. At least I thought there was. I stepped back into the hallway, and that's when I noticed it. A photograph on the wall. Not there before. I walked closer slowly. It showed a family. 4 people, standing outside this exact house. Smiling, normal, but something about their faces made my stomach twist. Not their expressions, their eyes. They were all looking slightly off camera. Not at the photographer, not at each other, at something behind the camera. Like something was standing there, watching them pose. I stared longer than I should have. And then I noticed something worse. The house in the photo had curtains in the windows, curtains I had not seen in real life. I turned toward the kitchen window. No curtains, just glass, clear, cold, empty. But in the photo, they were there. Heavy red curtains, closed. I stepped back. My chest felt tight, because now I had a question I didn't want answered. If the house in the photo was the same house, why did it look more lived in than the one I was standing inside? A drawer suddenly slid open in the kitchen. Slow, controlled. I turned instantly. No one there, but the drawer was open halfway. Inside, spoons, neatly arranged, like someone cared about order. I didn't move for a moment, just listened. The house felt attentive, like it was waiting to see what I would do next. Then the sound came again. Not from the kitchen, from the hallway. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, walking away from me. I followed immediately. The hallway felt longer now. I was sure of it. Not slightly, noticeably longer, like distance had been stretched. Each step forward felt like 2 steps away from where I had been. The footsteps stopped near the living room. I reached the doorway, paused, looked inside. The living room was dimmer than the rest of the house. Not dark, just muted, like the light was being held back. And that's when I saw them. Not clearly at first, just shapes. A sofa, a chair, a small table, and on the sofa, a blanket, folded neatly, like someone had just stood up and left for a moment, but hadn't actually gone anywhere. I stepped in slowly. The air changed again, heavier, closer, and then I heard it. A whisper, right behind me. "This is still our home." I turned fast. Nothing, but my reflection in the window shifted a fraction too late. My body moved before the reflection did. I backed away instinctively. My heart started pounding harder, because I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I just couldn't see who was sharing it with me. Then the television turned on by itself. No sound, just static. White noise filling the room like breathing. Then slowly an image formed. A home video. Old, grainy, the same living room, but different, warmer, lived in. A family sitting together. Same family from the photo. Eating, talking, laughing, but no sound came through. Just visuals. And then something shifted in the video. The camera angle turned slightly, like someone had moved it. And for a split second, I saw a 5th chair, empty, facing the camera, like it was always meant for someone. My throat went dry. I stepped closer to the screen without realizing. And the moment I did, the family in the video stopped moving. All of them, at the same time. Every head turned slowly, toward the camera, toward me. My breath caught, because now I understood something I didn't want to understand. They weren't watching the recording. They were watching me. The TV flickered violently, then went black. Silence dropped instantly, like the house had exhaled. I stepped back, shaking slightly now. The living room felt different again. Not empty, not full, occupied in layers, like people existed here in different versions of time. Then I saw something on the floor. A child's toy. A small wooden car. I swear it wasn't there a second ago. I bent down slowly. My hand hovered over it, and just before I touched it, a tiny voice spoke from behind the sofa. "Don't break it." I froze completely. That voice wasn't a recording. It was real. Soft. Close. Human. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," I whispered automatically. Silence answered me. Then the same voice again. "Then why are you in our house?" My chest tightened painfully, because I didn't have an answer. I stepped backward toward the hallway, and as I did, I noticed something that made everything worse. The furniture had shifted. The sofa was now closer to the wall. The chair angled differently. The table moved slightly toward me, like the room had adjusted itself around my presence. I backed into the hallway fully, and the moment I crossed the threshold, the living room door closed behind me. Slow, soft, final, no slam, no force, just acceptance, like I had been allowed to see something. And now I was. I stood there in silence for a moment, trying to steady my breathing, trying to convince myself I was alone again. But then I noticed something new on the hallway wall. Another photograph. Same family. But this time, I was standing with them, smiling, and in the background of the photo, the house looked complete. Curtains, lights, life. Everything I couldn't see inside it now. And beneath the photo, a handwritten note appeared on the wall. Fresh, dark ink, still wet. It said, "Don't wake them again." The hallway light flickered once, and from inside the walls, I heard multiple breaths, slow, synchronized, like a family sleeping just behind the surface of the house. Waiting. The basement door was never supposed to be there. I stood in front of it for a full minute, just staring, trying to convince myself I had simply missed it before. But I hadn't, because I had checked this house twice already, and there was no basement entrance. Not in the photos, not in the listing, not in the layout I saw on my phone. Yet here it was, a thin wooden door, pressed directly into the concrete wall like it had grown there over time. No handle, only a dark vertical seam running down the middle, like something sealed shut from both sides. The air around it felt colder, not slightly, noticeably, like the house was breathing out from that spot. I swallowed hard and stepped closer. My fingers hovered near the seam, and that's when I noticed something carved into the wood above it. Not letters, not symbols I understood, just scratches, repeated lines, like someone had been counting without stopping. My chest tightened, because I realized something strange. I didn't remember coming down here. I looked behind me. The stairs were gone. Not blocked. Gone completely. Just a wall where they should have been. My heart skipped. I turned back to the door. It felt closer now. That's the only way I can explain it. Like the space itself had shifted while I wasn't looking. I whispered to myself, trying to stay calm. Basement, there was never a basement. But even as I said it, I didn't believe my own voice. Because I could smell it now. Damp air. Old wood. Something like rust. The door creaked. Not opening. Just responding. Like it had heard me. I stepped back instinctively. And that's when I noticed the floor behind me. It wasn't concrete anymore. It was wood. Old wooden planks. Dusty. Slightly uneven. like I was standing in a different part of the house entirely. My breath got shallow. I looked around slowly. The walls had changed. Still concrete, but older now. Stained, marked, like time had been rewritten here. And the door was no longer in a flat wall. It was in a small recessed space, like a doorway that had always existed, but was only now being revealed. My phone buzzed suddenly. I almost dropped it. No signal, but a single notification still came through. Just text. No sender. It said, "You should not be here." I stared at it for a long moment. Then the screen flickered, and the message changed. Now it said, "You already were." My throat went dry. I backed away again, but the wooden floor creaked under me, too loudly, like something underneath was listening. Then I heard it, a faint sound from behind the door. Not a knock, not a bang. Breathing, slow, patient, close. I froze completely. My mind tried to reject it, but my body didn't, because I could hear it clearly now. Multiple breaths, not one, several, synchronized, like a group waiting in perfect silence. I took a shaky step forward, then another. My hand moved before I could stop it, fingers touching the seam of the door. Cold, too cold, like touching metal left outside in winter. The breathing stopped instantly. Silence dropped so hard it hurt my ears. And then, a soft sound. From inside. A whisper. "My son." I froze. That voice didn't feel like it came through wood. It felt like it came through memory. Through something buried. I pulled my hand back fast. My heart was pounding now, because I knew that voice. Or at least, something inside me did. The door shifted slightly. Not opening, just adjusting, like something behind it had leaned closer. I stepped back again, and that's when I noticed something on the wall beside it. A photo frame. Fresh, clean, like it had been placed recently. Inside it was a family. Same one from upstairs. Same faces. But this time, they weren't outside the house. They were inside this basement, standing around me, smiling. My stomach dropped, because I wasn't in the photo. Not exactly. I was slightly out of frame, standing just behind them. Blurred, unfocused, like I didn't fully belong in the moment. I stepped back instinctively. The frame tilted slightly, and then I saw something worse. The basement in the photo was different. Larger, cleaner, lived in. There were lights hanging from the ceiling. Furniture, a warm glow. A normal home. Not this decaying, shifting space I was standing in. I turned away quickly, but the room behind me wasn't stable anymore. The walls seemed closer, then farther, like the house was struggling to decide what shape it should be. The door creaked again, this time louder. I didn't look at it. I couldn't, because I felt something else now. Not fear alone. Recognition, like I had stood here before. Not physically, emotionally, somewhere buried in my mind. The whisper came again, closer this time. "You left us here." My breath caught. That wasn't possible. I don't even know this place. But my hands, they were shaking in a way that didn't feel new. It felt familiar. I turned slowly, against my better judgment. The door was now slightly open. Just a crack. Darkness inside, thick, almost solid, but there was something in it. Movement, slow shifting shapes, like people standing too close together in a narrow space. I stepped forward without realizing. One step, then another. My thoughts were splitting now. One part of me screaming to leave. The other part, quiet, curious, drawn in. The crack widened slightly, and a smell came out. Old food, dust, and something like childhood. I stopped instantly. My eyes watered slightly, because that smell hit something deep, something I couldn't explain. The whisper came again, this time not from inside the door, from behind me. Why did you come back alone? I turned fast. Nothing, but the room had changed again. Now there were marks on the walls, handprints, small ones, children's size, all facing toward the door, like they had been standing here, watching it for a long time, waiting. I backed up slowly, but my heel hit something. I looked down. A toy, a small wooden car, same one from upstairs, but now there were more, scattered across the floor, like they had rolled out from the door when it first opened. I didn't remember seeing them before, but now they were everywhere. Then I heard footsteps, not from the door, from above, slow, walking across wood, right above my head. But I was supposed to be below the house already. There was no above anymore, unless the house was rebuilding itself again. The door opened a little more, and this time I saw inside. Just a glimpse, a hallway, not dark, not empty, a home hallway, warm light, painted walls, children's drawings, shoes lined neatly by the door, normal life, and standing in the middle of it, a woman. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, smiling softly, like I was expected, like I had just arrived home after a long day. My heart pounded harder, because that hallway didn't belong to this house. It belonged to something else, something living, something that had never stopped existing. The whisper came one last time, right inside my ear now. You finally came back. I stumbled backward instantly. The moment I did, the basement shifted violently, walls shaking, floor tilting, like reality itself was rejecting what I had seen. The door slammed shut. No sound of impact, just closure. Final. The house went silent again. Too silent. I stood there breathing hard, staring at the sealed door. Now just a plain wall again. No crack, no seam, no sign it ever existed. My hands were shaking badly. I stepped back slowly, and that's when I saw it. On the floor, a small child's drawing, fresh, still slightly damp like ink had just dried. It showed the house, and inside it, a family, standing together, smiling, holding hands, and behind them, a figure, tall, blurred, standing alone in the basement doorway, watching. The drawing was labeled in uneven handwriting. Don't leave again. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt it on my face, because I finally understood something I didn't want to accept. This house wasn't haunted. It was remembering, and I was part of what it refused to forget. Above me, the floor creaked once more. Slow, deliberate, like the family upstairs had heard everything. and was waiting to see if I would come back, where I belonged. And as I stood there in the dark, staring at a wall that had once been a door, I realized something even worse. The house wasn't finished with me yet. Not even close. The landlord didn't look me in the eyes when he handed over the keys. That should have been my first warning. But at that point, I didn't care. I was too broke, too tired, and too desperate to ask questions. The apartment was cheap. Suspiciously cheap. Almost insulting in a city where even a small room costs more than I could afford. But when I saw it in person, I understood why no one else wanted it. The building stood at the edge of a quiet street. Too quiet. No traffic sound, no kids, no barking dogs. Just still air, and a building that looked like it had been forgotten on purpose. The paint was faded gray. Windows slightly uneven, like they had been installed at different times by different people. And the entrance door, it didn't close properly. It stayed half a finger's width open, no matter how hard you pushed it. The landlord finally spoke as I stood there. His voice was low, careful, like he was trying not to wake something. "Room 3B, he said, "top floor, end of the hallway." Then he added something that made me pause. "Don't change anything inside." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He blinked slowly. Too slowly. "Just don't move anything." Then he handed me the key and turned away before I could ask more. No contract explanation. No rules sheet. Just that one sentence. Don't move anything. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Because when you're broke, warnings don't sound like danger. They sound like inconvenience. The hallway inside the building smelled like old wood and wet walls. Dim yellow lights flickered overhead. Not fully broken. Just unstable. Like they were thinking about shutting off. Every step I took echoed too long after my foot left the ground. Too clean. Too delayed. Like the building was replaying my movement. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked under me, but not in a normal way. It sounded careful. Like the stairs didn't want to disturb anyone. At the second floor landing, I stopped. Something felt off. I couldn't explain it at first, but the hallway looked slightly longer than it should have. I checked both ends. Same doors. Same numbers. But the distance between them felt stretched. Like the building had more space inside than it should. I shook it off. Tired brain, new place, stress. That's what I told myself. Then I saw the first rule. Written directly on the wall beside the stairs. Not printed. Not framed. Just scratched into paint. Do not open door 3C after midnight. I stared at it. 3C wasn't my room. Mine was 3B. I kept walking. The hallway got colder as I moved forward. Not physically cold like air conditioning. Something deeper. Like temperature didn't matter anymore. Room 3A passed. Then 3B. My door. It looked normal. Almost comforting. That's what scared me most. Because nothing else in this building felt normal. I unlocked it. The door opened with a soft sigh. Inside was a small apartment. One room, one bed, one kitchen corner, one bathroom. Simple. Empty. Too empty. But clean. Freshly cleaned, actually. Like someone had just left. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The silence inside was different. Heavier. Like the walls were closer than they should be. I placed my bag down. Looked around. Everything seemed fine at first. Then I noticed something. There were 3 hooks on the wall near the entrance. All empty. but one of them had a faint imprint, like something heavy used to hang there. A coat maybe, or keys. I told myself not to overthink it. I walked into the kitchen corner. There was a small note taped to the cabinet. I hadn't seen it before. I pulled it off. It was handwritten. Same shaky handwriting as the wall outside. Rule 1, do not sleep with lights off. I frowned. That was strange. I looked up. The apartment had only one ceiling light. Old bulb. Weak glow. I flicked the switch. It worked. Barely. Yellow light filled the room. Then I noticed something worse. The light wasn't steady. It flickered slightly, but not randomly. In a pattern, like it was breathing. I stepped back slowly. My phone buzzed. No signal, but still a message came through. No sender, just text. You moved it. I froze. My eyes scanned the room. Moved what? Everything looked the same. Same bed, same table, same small window facing the alley. Then I noticed it. The chair. It was slightly angled, facing the door now. I was sure it hadn't been like that before. A cold weight settled in my chest. I walked closer to it. The chair looked normal. Old wooden frame, thin cushion, but something about it felt used, like someone had just stood up from it. I stepped back again. My foot brushed something under the bed. I bent down slowly. A second note. Folded. Hidden. My hands hesitated before picking it up. This one was different. Smaller handwriting. Almost like a child wrote it. It said, "Don't sit where we sit." My throat went dry. I straightened up quickly. Now I felt it. The room wasn't empty. It never had been. It was just pretending. I checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Still early, but something about the apartment made it feel like midnight already. I sat on the edge of the bed anyway. Bad decision. I know that now. The mattress sank slightly under me. Too much. Like someone else was already there. I stood up instantly. Heart racing. My breathing got uneven. I looked at the bed carefully. The indentation stayed, slowly forming a deeper shape. Like weight was still there. Invisible, but real. I backed toward the door, and that's when I heard it. A soft knock from inside the wall. Not the door, the wall. 3 knocks. Slow, controlled. I stopped breathing. Then silence again. I moved toward the door slowly. Unlocked it. Opened it just a little. The hallway outside was empty. But the lights were different now. Dimmer, longer shadows. Like the building had aged in minutes. I stepped out. The moment my foot hit the hallway floor, I noticed something new. Room 3C. Right next to mine. I was sure it wasn't there before. The number plate looked slightly newer than the others. Cleaner, like it had been added recently. My chest tightened, because I remembered the rule. Do not open 3C after midnight. I checked the time again. 11:58 p.m. Close enough. I walked past it slowly, without looking at the door. But then I heard something inside it. A sound. Not movement. Breathing. Soft. Slow. Like someone sleeping just behind the wood. I kept walking, then stopped, because I realized something. The breathing wasn't random. It matched mine. I held my breath. The sound inside stopped instantly. I exhaled slowly. It started again. My stomach dropped. I wasn't alone in copying it. Something inside that room was responding to me. I forced myself to move away. Vast, back to my room. I closed the door, locked it, stood there breathing heavily. Silence again, but not peace. Waiting silence. Then the light flickered. Once, twice, and went steady again. Too steady. I looked up. The bulb was now brighter, stronger, warmer, like someone had replaced it. My phone buzzed again. Same message. New line added. You finally noticed us. My hands started shaking. I turned slowly. The chair in my room was no longer empty. It was slightly pulled out, just a few centimeters, like someone had been sitting there recently and hadn't fully left. The lights flickered one last time, and from behind the bathroom door, I heard something whisper softly. Not my name. Not yet. Just one word. Roommate. And I realized with a sinking feeling, this apartment was never rented to just one person. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute, because every time I closed my eyes, I could feel it. The room wasn't empty. It was shared, and somewhere behind the walls, something was awake with me. At 2:13 a.m., I heard the first sound. A soft scrape, like a chair moving slowly across wood. I sat up instantly in bed. The apartment was dark, but not fully dark. The streetlight outside leaked through the window in thin, broken lines. Enough to see shapes, not enough to feel safe. Then I heard it again, this time closer, from the wall on my right, the wall that separated me from room 3C. The forbidden room. The scraping stopped. Silence came back fast. Too fast. Like something was listening for my reaction. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe properly. Then, a knock. Not loud. Not sharp. Just one soft knock from inside the wall. I froze. Because it wasn't random. It felt intentional. Like a greeting. Or a warning. I slowly turned my head toward the wall. Nothing there. Just paint. Just concrete. But I knew now. The wall wasn't empty. It was occupied. I stayed still for a long time. I don't know how long. Minutes maybe. Or something worse, longer. Then I heard footsteps outside my room. In the hallway. Slow. Careful. Bare feet. I knew it immediately. Because the sound wasn't echoing. It was dragging slightly. Like someone was trying not to make noise. But failing. I got out of bed slowly. Every muscle tight. I moved toward the door. Put my ear against it. Nothing. Then, a whisper. Very faint. Not inside the room. Not outside. Somewhere in between. Don't open. I stepped back instantly. My heart slammed against my chest. Because that wasn't my voice. And it wasn't the landlord's either. It sounded like it came from the building itself. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to decide if I should ignore it or obey it. Then I heard it again. Not a whisper this time. A hum. Soft. Like someone humming inside a closed mouth. From room 3C. The forbidden room. The one I was told never to open after midnight. And now it was 2 a.m. I backed away from my door slowly. But then I noticed something strange. The light under my door. It wasn't steady anymore. It was flickering, like someone was standing outside it, touching the hallway switch. I held my breath, and the flickering stopped. Immediately, like it had noticed I noticed. That's when I understood something deeply wrong. Whatever was outside was reacting to me. I slowly looked toward the kitchen area. The apartment felt different again, slightly rearranged, not dramatically, just enough to confuse memory. The chair near the table was now facing the wall. I was sure it wasn't like that before. I walked closer slowly. The wood creaked under my feet. Too loud. Everything was too loud now. Even my breathing felt like it was being recorded. Then I saw something on the table. A glass of water, half full. I stopped. I didn't leave that there. I never poured it. The glass was still slightly vibrating, like it had just been placed down. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to. But then I noticed something inside it. A reflection. Not mine. Someone sitting behind me. I spun instantly. Nothing. Empty kitchen. But the glass was still. Completely still now. Like it had shown me what it wanted to. I stepped back from the table slowly. And that's when I heard it again. A sound from the wall. Not knocking this time. Breathing. Slow. Very close. Then a voice. Male. Low. But calm. Not aggressive. Not angry. Just tired. You're awake again. My throat went dry instantly. I whispered without thinking. Who is there? Silence. Then, a small sound, like something shifting closer to the wall. And then the answer came. I live here. My stomach dropped, because the voice didn't feel like it was coming from outside. It felt like it was coming from inside the building structure itself. Like the walls had learned how to speak. I stepped backward toward my room. Slowly, carefully. Then I saw it. A shadow under my door. Not mine. Another one. Standing perfectly still. Facing me. I froze. The shadow didn't move. Didn't react. Just stayed there. Like it was waiting for me to open the door. I didn't. But then, it knocked. Once. Soft. Patient. I stepped back quickly. My heart racing now. The shadow didn't leave. It stayed. Then I heard something worse. Another knock. From the wall behind me. And another. From the ceiling. Then the floor. 3 directions. All at once. Surrounding me. Like the apartment had decided I was inside something living. I covered my mouth to stop my breathing from getting louder. Then the wall beside me spoke again. Not words this time. Just a question. Why don't you talk to him? I froze. Who? I whispered. A pause. Then, the neighbor. My eyes shifted toward the wall. Room 3C. The forbidden room. The one next to mine. I had never seen the neighbor. Never heard a voice from that room before tonight. Only rules, warnings, and silence. Then I heard it. A faint dragging sound again. But this time inside my room. Behind me. I turned slowly. My eyes scanning every corner. Nothing. But the sound continued. Closer now. Right behind my bed. I stepped forward carefully and looked down. Nothing under the bed, but the sound didn't stop. It was coming from inside the wall again. But now it wasn't random. It was rhythmic, like footsteps packing in a small room. Back and forth, back and forth. Then it stopped, suddenly, and the voice returned, closer than before. "You never greet me." I felt my hands shake slightly. I didn't understand what was happening anymore. I moved toward the wall separating me from 3C. Put my hand on it. Cold, very cold. Then I whispered again. "Are you the neighbor?" Silence. Then, yes. A single word. Simple. Human. That should have made it easier. But it didn't, because now I knew something worse. There was someone in there, but I had never seen them leave. Never heard them enter. Never even noticed life signs. Only rules and voices. Then I heard something unexpected. A chair being pulled back. Inside 3C. Followed by footsteps. Approaching the wall. Slow. Deliberate. Until a soft tap came directly from the other side. Right where my hand was. I pulled it back instantly. Then the voice spoke again. "I can see you now." My breathing stopped for a second. "What do you mean?" I whispered. No answer. Just silence. Then the light in my room flickered again. Once, twice, and stopped. But now something had changed. My reflection in the window wasn't aligned properly anymore. It was slightly delayed, like it was reacting late. And then I saw it. Behind my reflection, another shape, standing inside my room. But not physically, inside the reflection only. Still, watching. Then it slowly raised its hand. But I didn't move mine. I wasn't the one doing it. I stepped back slowly, and the reflection followed perfectly, except for one detail. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was smiling. I turned away from the window instantly, heart pounding, and as I did, the wall between me and room 3C cracked slightly. A thin line appeared, like something was pressing from the other side, trying to get closer. The voice came one last time. Soft, almost friendly. "Now we can finally talk properly." And as the crack widened just a little more, I realized the worst part wasn't that I had a neighbor. It was that the neighbor had been waiting for me to notice them the entire time I moved in. The footsteps above my head were impossible, because according to the building registry, there was no floor above me. But I was hearing it anyway. Slow, deliberate, like someone packing in circles, trying to decide whether to come down or keep watching me from above. I stood completely still in the middle of my room, holding my breath without realizing it. Listening. The footsteps continued. Not fast, not careless, carefully measured, like whoever was up there knew exactly how loud they were allowed to be. I slowly looked up at the ceiling. Old plaster, cracked in thin lines. Nothing unusual. But the sound didn't match what I was seeing. It was too real, too close. I whispered without meaning to. "There's no floor above this." And the footsteps stopped instantly. Silence hit the room like a weight dropping. My chest tightened, because now I knew something was listening back. I took a step backward. The floor creaked under me. And in the same second, a creak came from above, perfectly synchronized. I froze again. The timing wasn't random. It was copying me. I moved my hand slightly. A second later, something above mirrored the motion. not fully visible, just sound, just presence. I backed away slowly toward the wall. My mind was trying to explain it. Old pipes, structural noise, empty buildings settling. But deep down I knew this wasn't building noise. This was a tension. The footsteps started again, but now they were moving, not in circles, toward one direction, toward the center of the ceiling above me, above my bed. I stepped forward slowly. My bed was still untouched from earlier, but now it felt different, heavier, like something had been standing over it while I wasn't looking. The footsteps above stopped directly over it. Perfect alignment. I swallowed hard. Then I did something I regret even now. I spoke. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a faint sound. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Slow. Controlled. Right above me. I stepped back instantly. The breathing stopped, like it was waiting for me to react again. I looked around my room. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. The walls felt thinner, like separation between me and something else was weakening. I moved toward the door slowly. I needed space. I needed distance. But before I could reach it, a soft thud came from above. Something heavy shifting. Then another. Then dragging. Like furniture being moved across a wooden floor. But there was no wooden floor above. At least there shouldn't be. I placed my hand on the door handle and froze because I heard something new now. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A voice. Soft. Almost casual. "Don't leave yet." I pulled my hand back instantly. My throat went dry. That voice wasn't echoing. It was coming directly from above my head. I stepped away from the door, slowly turning back toward the center of the room. And then I saw it. A small crack forming in the ceiling. Thin, barely visible at first, but growing, like something on the other side was pressing harder, trying to widen the gap. Dust started falling, slowly, like the building was shedding itself. Then another sound. A knock from inside the ceiling. Not loud, just one, but intentional. I whispered, "This floor doesn't exist." And the voice came back immediately. "Then why are you still below it?" My heart dropped, because that question didn't make sense, but it felt like it should. The crack widened slightly. A sliver of darkness appeared above me. Not complete darkness. Something deeper, like a space that didn't belong in this building. I stepped back again. The footsteps returned, but now they were moving closer to the crack. Slow, deliberate, and then they stopped right above it. I realized something terrifying. It wasn't trapped up there. It was choosing to stay above me. Watching, waiting. I backed into the wall behind me. My breathing was getting louder. Too loud. And I knew it now. If I could hear it clearly, it could hear me just as clearly. Then the voice spoke again. Closer this time. "You moved in alone." I didn't answer, but the silence felt like an answer anyway. The ceiling creaked, and I saw something press against it from above. A shape, not fully visible, just outline, like a hand, or something shaped like one. I stepped forward slowly, unable to control my legs. The crack widened again. More dust fell, and with it a smell. Old wood, wet cement, and something faintly human. like sweat trapped in walls for too long. I covered my nose instinctively. Then the footsteps started again. But this time they weren't walking. They were circling above me. Faster now. Agitated. Like something was deciding whether to come through or not. I whispered, "What do you want?" The movement stopped instantly. Silence again. Then, a new sound. A chair dragging. Directly above my bed. I stepped back immediately. My heart pounding harder now. Because earlier, there was no furniture up there. There was no up there. At least that's what I believed. Then a soft thump. Something sitting down. Right above me. Slow. Heavy. Settled. Like it had finally chosen a place. The voice came again. Calmer now. Almost satisfied. Now you're underneath us properly. My blood ran cold. Because that wasn't a threat. It sounded like a correction. Like I had been misplaced, and now I was finally where I belonged. I shook my head slightly. No, there's no floor above this. A pause. Then a soft laugh. Not mocking. Just patient. You keep saying that. The ceiling crack widened again. And this time I saw it. Just for a second. A faint light above. Not natural. Warm. Like a lamp in another room. And movement behind it. Multiple shadows now. Not one. Several. Standing close together. Looking down. At me. My legs went weak for a second. I grabbed the wall for support. Because now I understood something I didn't want to accept. This wasn't an empty upper floor. It never was. It was just hidden from record. Not from reality. The footsteps started again. But now they were walking toward the crack. Slow. Controlled. And stopping right above me. The voice returned one last time. Very close now. Almost intimate. You never looked up long enough. The crack widened further, and I saw fingers gripping the edge from above. Pulling, slowly, testing the opening. I stepped back instinctively. My back hit the opposite wall. No escape route. No hallway sound. Just me. And whatever was above. The fingers stopped. Then loosened. Like it had decided not to come through yet. Instead, it spoke softly. We can wait longer. The footsteps returned. Moving away from the crack again. Back into the upper space. Circling. Watching. Waiting. But now I knew something worse. It wasn't trying to enter. It was studying me. Learning my timing. My reactions. My fear. And as I stood there in the dim light of my room, staring at a ceiling that no longer felt like an ending, I realized the truth slowly forming in my mind. There was no empty floor above me. There was only a floor that chose not to be seen. And tonight, it had finally noticed I could hear it. The footsteps slowed again. Not gone. Just waiting. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which side of the ceiling I was actually living on anymore. The file wasn't supposed to be in my mailbox. But it was. No envelope. No stamp. Just a thin plastic folder slipped halfway into the metal box like someone didn't care if I found it or if I didn't. My name was written on it. Same handwriting as the warning notes in the apartment. My fingers went cold before I even touched it. For a moment, I just stood there in the hallway, staring at it, listening to the building around me. Nothing moved. No footsteps above. No breathing in the walls. That silence felt worse than the noises. because now it felt like everything was waiting for me to open it. I pulled it out slowly. The folder was heavier than it should have been. Inside were papers, old ones, official looking, rental records. My hands started shaking when I saw the first page. Room 3B, tenant history. My name was there. Not handwritten. Printed. Clean. Official. But the date next to it made no sense. It showed I moved in months ago. Not days. Months. I stared at it, trying to force my brain to reject it. It didn't feel real. It couldn't be real. I had only just arrived. I flipped the page. Another record. Same room. Same name. But different signatures below it. Tenants before me. One after another. All signed. All dated. All officially processed. But the dates, they overlapped. Like the room was being rented to different people at the same time. My breathing got shallow. I kept reading, page after page. Names I didn't recognize. People I had never seen. But they all shared one thing. Room 3B. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop completely. A handwritten note at the bottom of one file. Not official. Not printed. It said, "This tenant remains active." My hand froze. Active. Like I was still here before I was here. I looked around the hallway instinctively. It felt narrower now. The walls closer. The air heavier. Like the building had leaned in to see what I was reading. I forced myself to turn the page again. There was a photo attached. Old surveillance print. Grainy. Black and white. It showed room 3B. From the inside. But it wasn't empty. Someone was standing in it. Facing the camera. I leaned closer slowly. My heart slowed down in a strange way. Not calm. Just confused. Because the person in the photo was me. But wrong. Not exactly me. The face was the same shape. Same posture. Same room. But the expression wasn't mine. It looked settled. Like someone who had been living there for a very long time. Not a new tenant. A permanent one. I dropped the folder slightly. My hands felt numb. This had to be a mistake. A mix-up. A file error. Anything else. But then I noticed something worse. The timestamp on the photo. It was taken before I moved in. My throat tightened. Before I even knew this place existed. A sound came from my room behind me. A soft click. Like a door handle turning slowly. I turned instantly. My room door was slightly open. I was sure I had locked it. I walked toward it slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. Inside, everything looked the same. But the air felt different. Occupied. Not empty anymore. I stepped in carefully. The chair near the table was facing the wall again. I hadn't touched it. I stopped breathing for a second. Then I heard it. A faint rustling sound from the bathroom. Not water. Not pipes. Movement. Slow. Controlled. I stepped toward it. My hand hovered over the bathroom door. Then stopped. Because I heard something else. A voice. Soft. Familiar. It came from inside the room behind me. My room. I turned fast. Nothing there. But the voice didn't stop. It's still my room. My skin went cold. Because that wasn't my voice. It sounded like me. But older. More tired. like someone who had lived my life longer than I had. I stepped back slowly. My eyes scanned the room. Then I saw something on the wall. A framed paper. New. I was sure it hadn't been there before. I walked closer. It was a rental agreement. Same apartment. Room 3B. But the tenant name was blank, except for a faint outline, like something had been erased but not fully removed. And beneath it in red ink, do not reassign. My pulse started rising again. I turned around quickly. The bathroom door was now fully open. I hadn't heard it move. Inside, the mirror was covered. Not broken. Covered with paper. Just like before. But this time, the paper was different. It had writing on it. Repeated lines. One sentence over and over. You are not new here. I stepped back again. My back hit the wall. Cold. Too cold. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. No signal. But still, a message came through. Same unknown sender. The text said, "You're reading the wrong file." My eyes widened. I looked down at the folder still in my hand. Then flipped the last page. It was empty. Completely blank. Except for one line written at the bottom. Fresh ink. Still slightly wet. It said, "He just NOTICED." A loud knock came from the wall beside me. I flinched hard. Then another knock. And another. Not random. Not chaotic. Rhythmic. Like someone trying to get my attention from inside the structure of the building. Then the voice returned again. Closer now. Not from the room. Not from the hallway. From everywhere. You found your records. I backed away slowly. My breathing quickened. No, this isn't mine, I whispered. Silence. Then a soft reply. It is now. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. And stopped. But the room didn't return to normal. It felt duplicated. Like two versions of the same space were overlapping. I could feel something standing just out of sight. Not fully formed. Not fully gone. Watching. Then I saw something on the floor. A second folder. Same as the one I was holding. But older. Dusty. Like it had been there longer than the apartment itself. I picked it up slowly. Inside were more records. But these weren't new. They were ancient. Faded. Names repeated across pages. But one detail stood out. Every record had the same tenant listed at some point. Unknown. No identity. Just a blank space that always reappeared. And beside it, room 3B. Again and again. I turned another page. And froze. Because this time, the tenant name was filled in. My name. But the date was decades ago. My hands went numb completely. I dropped the folder. It hit the floor softly, but the sound echoed too long, like the building was repeating it. Then the whisper came again, right behind my ear. You always come back to this room. I turned instantly. No one there, but the bathroom mirror covering had fallen slightly, a crack forming in it. And through the small opening, I saw something I shouldn't have. A hallway. Not mine. Different lighting. Different walls. And standing inside it was me, watching back. But I wasn't sure which version was real anymore. The apartment door clicked shut on its own. Slowly. Carefully. And the final thing I heard before everything went silent again was the same voice, now calm, almost relieved. Welcome back to your first stay. The gate was already open when I arrived. That should have been my first warning. But the place looked abandoned enough to ignore it. A remote police lodge sitting at the edge of dead land. No nearby houses. No movement. Just tall grass bending in slow wind like it was trying to point me away. Still, I stepped inside. Because the report said the records were here. Old unsolved cases. Closed files. Things the department didn't want in the main archive anymore. I came alone. That was mistake number 2. The building was smaller than I expected. 1 floor. Cracked walls. Faded sign above the door that read, BLACKWELL, Investigation Lodge. The paint on the letters looked fresh in places, like someone had recently tried to restore it, but gave up halfway. I pushed the door. It opened too easily. No resistance. No creak. Just a soft release, like the building had been waiting for me to enter. Inside smelled like old paper and damp wood. But there was something else underneath. Metal, like rusted blood that had been washed too many times. I paused at the entrance. The hallway stretched forward. Too straight. Too clean for a place this old. That was strange, because abandoned buildings don't stay clean unless someone keeps them that way. And no one was supposed to be here. I took a step inside. My shoes echoed. Once, then delayed. Like the sound arrived late, unsure of when it was supposed to exist. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I walked further. On the left wall were old frames. Empty names. Faded photographs. All police officers. But the faces were scratched out in most of them. Not vandalized randomly. Intentionally erased. Carefully, like someone didn't want them remembered. I stopped in front of one frame. The glass was cracked. Inside was a nameplate that had been scraped so hard, the metal was bent. I leaned closer, but the name was still barely visible. Officer Grant. I don't know why that name felt familiar. But it did, like a memory I couldn't fully access. I moved on quickly. The hallway ended in a reception desk. Behind it was a bell. Old brass. Dusted but not rusted. Which felt wrong, because nothing in this building should still shine. I pressed it lightly. The sound rang out. Too loud. Too clean. Then silence. No footsteps. No response. Just the echo fading too slowly, like the building was holding onto it longer than it should. I walked behind the desk. There was a logbook. Open, as if someone had just been reading it. My fingers hovered over it before I touched it. The ink was fresh. That's what stopped me. Fresh ink in a place abandoned for years. I leaned in. The page read, Archive Reactivation Law. Below it entries. Recent entries. Dates from this month. My chest tightened. That wasn't possible. I flipped the page carefully. Another entry. Same handwriting. Same structure. But one line made me stop completely. New investigator assigned, unknown. My name wasn't there, but something worse was. A blank space, like the system couldn't decide what I was. I stepped back from the desk slowly. My throat felt dry. I should have left then. I really should have. But the deeper part of the building was calling attention without sound. A faint humming came from the corridor ahead. Low, steady, like electricity running through old bones. I followed it. The hallway opened into a wider room, and I froze because it wasn't empty. Rows of filing cabinets lined the space, dozens of them, old metal drawers stacked too high, all labeled, all organized, all active. That word stood out. Active files in a dead building. I walked closer slowly. Each cabinet had a small red tab, some blinking faintly, like they were alive. I pulled one drawer open. Inside were case files, thick folders, yellowed paper, crime scene photos, statements, reports, but every single file had the same thing at the top. Unsolved REOPNED. I scanned through one, then another. My hands started shaking slightly because I recognized something in them. Locations I had seen before, in news reports, in training documents. But these files went deeper. They included details never released to the public. Details that should not exist in any archive. A voice came behind me. I told them this place still remembers everything. I turned instantly. No one there, but the humming in the room changed pitch slightly, like it had reacted to the sound of my attention shifting. I swallowed hard. "Who's there?" I said quietly. No answer. Just the cabinets, still humming, still alive in a way I couldn't explain. I moved deeper into the room. At the far end was a door, heavy metal, different from everything else. It had a small glass window in the center, fogged from the inside. I approached it slowly. My reflection appeared in the glass, but something was wrong. It was delayed again, like it was waiting for permission to move. Then it smiled, but I didn't. My breath caught. I stepped back immediately. The reflection stayed smiling. A moment later, it returned to normal. I stared at it. My mind tried to reject what I saw, but the building wasn't giving me that option anymore. Behind me, a drawer slammed shut. I turned again. Nothing moved, but now the humming was louder, closer, like it had moved into the walls. I walked toward the metal door. It wasn't locked. That was worse, because locked things are honest. Unsealed things are not. I pushed it open slowly. Inside was a smaller room. Dim lighting, a single table, and something that made my stomach drop. A stack of case files already placed there, freshly arranged, like someone had been waiting for me specifically. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. Not forcefully, just final. The files on the table were different from the ones outside. These were newer, clean, printed recently. At the top of each one was a label. Unknown investigator case notes. My hands froze before touching them, because I already knew what I would find. Still, I opened the first file. Inside was a report. Not about crimes, not about suspects, about me, my arrival, my movements, even my hesitation at the gate. I looked up instantly. The room felt smaller now, the walls closer. The light flickered once, then stabilized. A page in the file flipped on its own. Second report, more recent. It described me walking into the building, exactly as I had done minutes ago, but written before it happened. My pulse spiked. "No," I whispered. The paper didn't care. It kept updating. A third page appeared. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten. Slow, deliberate. It said, "He is reading this now. My breath stopped. The humming outside stopped too. Everything in the building went silent at once, like it was listening, waiting. Then the table creaked slightly, as if something invisible had just sat down opposite me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then a voice came again. Not behind me, not in the room, inside the file itself. You came back to where it all started. My fingers slowly released the folder. It fell softly onto the table, but the pages didn't scatter. They stayed open, waiting, like they expected me to keep reading. The light above flickered again, and in that split second of darkness, I saw another chair appear on the opposite side of the table. Occupied, not fully visible, just a shape, watching me, waiting for me to recognize it. The light came back. The chair was still there, empty, but I knew it wasn't empty a moment ago. I stood slowly. My legs felt weak. The door behind me unlocked on its own. A soft click, inviting or releasing. I wasn't sure anymore. As I stepped toward it, the final page in the file turned by itself. One last line appeared. Fresh ink, still wet. It said, "Welcome back to your first case." And as I left the room, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't an investigation site reopening old cases. It was reopening me. The first change wasn't obvious. It was just a single word in the file. But it made my stomach drop instantly, because I knew what I had read the night before. And it wasn't that. I was back in the same archive room, same metal table, same humming cabinets around me. But the air felt different now. Heavier, like the building had stopped pretending to be empty. The case file in front of me was still open. Unknown investigator case notes. I hadn't touched it since yesterday. I was sure of that. But now a new page was there. Fresh, smooth paper. No dust. No aging. Like it had been printed minutes ago. My hand hesitated before touching it. Then I flipped it and froze. The title had changed. It now read, Case 14, Incident ATBLACKWELL Lodge Unrecorded. My chest tightened. Blackwell Lodge. That was this place. But there was no record of any incident here. At least not in any public system. I scanned the first line. On arrival of investigators, subject exhibited signs of memory misalignment. I stopped reading for a second. Memory misalignment. That phrase didn't belong in any official report. But the worst part wasn't the wording. It was the detail. It described me. My arrival. My hesitation at the gate. My pause before entering. Everything I remembered doing. But I hadn't reported any of it. And this file was already written. Before I had written anything. A soft sound came from behind me. A cabinet drawer sliding shut. Slow. Controlled. I turned instantly. Nothing there. But I noticed something new. One of the cabinets had a red light blinking now. I was sure it wasn't blinking before. I walked toward it slowly. Each step felt louder than it should have been. The humming in the walls shifted slightly, like the building was watching me move. The cabinet label read, Active Case Storage. My fingers hovered over the handle. Then I pulled it open. Inside were folders. Hundreds, all labeled with case numbers. All neatly arranged. But every single one had the same strange marking at the top. Rewriting in progress. My throat went dry. I pulled one folder out. Case 9. I opened it carefully. The first page was a crime report, but halfway through the page, the ink looked fresh, like it was still drying. I leaned closer and saw something impossible. The text was changing, right in front of me, words shifting slightly, reforming, like the file was correcting itself as I read it. I stepped back instantly. No, that's not possible, I whispered. But the cabinet didn't care. Another file slid forward on its own. Case 10. I didn't touch it, but it opened anyway. The pages turned slowly, one by one, and then I saw something worse. The report described a murder, but I recognized the victim's name. It was someone I had seen before. In the hallway frames, the scratched out photos. Officer Grant. My head spun slightly. That name again. Why did it keep coming back? I tried to focus on the file, but the text was still moving, changing details, dates shifting, time rewriting itself inside the document. Then suddenly, a new line appeared at the bottom of the page. Fresh ink again. It said, "This incident was never reported until you, ARRIVED." My hands trembled. I dropped the file back into the drawer. It closed itself immediately, slowly, like it was satisfied. The humming in the room grew louder, not chaotic, organized, like a system activating. Then the voice returned, soft, calm, coming from everywhere again. "You're noticing the edits now." I turned in every direction. "No," I said quietly, "this isn't real. These files are corrupted." Silence. Then the voice replied, "Corruption implies error." A pause. Then, "This is correction." My skin went cold. Correction. Not rewriting. Not distortion. Correction. Like reality itself was being edited. I stepped away from the cabinet slowly. But the case file on the table, it changed again. Another page appeared. I didn't even flip it. It was just there. And this time, it described something I had never seen before. A version of me, inside this building. Not arriving. Not investigating. But already working. Already assigned. Already known. My name appeared on the page. But wrong. Slightly different spelling. Like the system couldn't fully agree on who I was. Then another line appeared beneath it. Subject has prior exposure to case environment. My breath hitched. Prior exposure. That made no sense. I had never been here before. At least I didn't think I had. A sudden sound echoed through the room. A door opening somewhere deeper in the building. Slow, heavy, metal scraping against metal. I froze, because I knew I was alone. At least I was supposed to be. The sound came again, closer this time. I turned toward the hallway outside the archive room. The lights flickered once, then stabilized, but something was standing there now. Not fully visible, just a shape at the edge of the corridor. Watching, not moving. I stepped back slightly. My heel hit the cabinet behind me. A small metallic clink echoed, and instantly, the shape in the hallway shifted its head. Like it heard me, like it was reacting to sound. I stopped breathing. The figure took one slow step forward, then stopped again. Still not fully clear, just outline, human-like, but too still between movements. The voice came again, closer now, You're reading your own reconstruction. My eyes widened slightly. No, I whispered, that's not possible. The figure in the hallway tilted slightly, as if listening. Then I noticed something worse. The case file on the table had a new section, one I hadn't seen before. A photograph. I didn't remember any photos being taken. I leaned in slowly, and my stomach dropped. It was me, standing inside this archive room. But the angle was wrong, like it had been taken from above, from a place that shouldn't exist, from the ceiling. I stepped back instantly. My heart started beating faster now, because that meant something had been watching me from above, not just observing, recording. The file flipped another page, by itself, and now it showed a timeline. My timeline, but split. Two versions. One labeled current, the other labeled original. My breath caught. Original. What did that mean? The text on the page shifted again, slowly, and then it changed completely. It now said, subject is expiring, file alignment failure. The cabinets around me began humming louder, like a system reaching full activation. The figure in the hallway took another step forward, now closer, still unclear, but more defined than before. I realized something terrifying. It wasn't approaching me physically. It was becoming more visible as I understood it, like awareness itself was shaping it. The voice came one final time, right behind me now. Soft, certain, you are not reading the case files. A pause. Then, you are becoming one. I turned instantly, but the archive room looked different now. The cabinets weren't just storage anymore. They felt like walls of something alive. And the files on the table were no longer paper. They looked active, waiting. The door behind me clicked shut. Not locking, not trapping, just finalizing, like the system had finished assigning me my role. And as I stood there in the humming silence of the archive room, staring at documents that were rewriting me faster than I could understand them, I realized the worst part wasn't that the files were changing. It was that they had started changing me too. And somewhere inside the system, my original version was already being overwritten. The first tape started playing before I even pressed play. Just a faint click from the recorder. Then silence. Then breathing. Too close. Too human. I froze in the interrogation room, staring at the old tape machine sitting in front of me like it had been waiting all this time just to wake up. The room itself felt wrong, smaller than before. Or maybe I was just noticing the corners now. Dark stains on the table, scratches on the metal arms of the chair, and one-way glass on the far wall that didn't reflect anything anymore. Just black, like it was watching back instead of showing. The tape voice finally spoke. Male, calm, almost tired. I already told you I wasn't there that night. I leaned closer without meaning to, because I recognized something in his tone. Not the voice, the emotion, fear hiding under control. I checked the label on the tape. Case 3, UNSUBJCT interview. No name, no identity, just a number. I rewound it slightly, pressed play again. Same voice, same sentence, but this time, a second voice answered immediately. Female, close, too close. You always say that, but the room remembers you. My skin tightened, because there was no record of a female suspect in this case. None. I flipped through the case folder on the table. Empty pages. No transcripts. No notes. Just blank paper, waiting for something to exist. The tape continued. The man's breathing got faster. I don't know what room you're talking about. A pause. Then footsteps. Inside the recording. Not outside. Inside. Slow packing. Metal chair scraping. Then the female voice again. You're in it right now. I pulled back instantly. The interrogation room felt colder. The air shifted slightly, like the building itself had leaned in closer to listen. I looked at the one-way glass. Still black. Still wrong. Then the tape made a sound I wasn't ready for. A third voice. Mine. Not exactly, but identical enough to make my chest tight. Tell him the truth. I stood up so fast the chair scraped behind me. No, I whispered. I looked at the recorder. Hands shaking now. That voice wasn't part of any file. It couldn't be. But the tape didn't stop. The male suspect's voice came back. Confused. I don't understand. Who are you? The female voice answered softly. You're not supposed to understand. You're supposed to remember. A long silence followed. Then something strange happened. The tape hiss changed pitch, like it was switching rooms. Then the environment on the recording shifted. I could hear a door opening. Heavy metal. Echoing hallway. And then footsteps moving closer to a chair. Someone sat down. Slowly, carefully, the female voice spoke again. But this time, she sounded closer to me than the tape. You were the one who questioned him. My stomach dropped. I looked around the room instinctively. Empty. Still empty. But my reflection in the metal table was slightly delayed again. I shook my head. This is not real, I whispered. The tape answered instantly. Then why are you still here? The male suspect laughed softly on the recording. Not amused. Not happy. Just broken. She always does this, he said. She asks questions she already knows the answers to. The female voice went quiet for a moment. Then, because the investigator keeps changing, my hand stopped moving. That sentence didn't feel like dialogue anymore. It felt like a statement about me. I rewound the tape again, this time faster, trying to break it, trying to find a point where it stopped making sense. But every version said the same thing. Every time I listened, the conversation changed slightly. New words appeared. Old words disappeared. Like the interview was being rewritten while I listened to it. I slammed the stop button. Silence hit the room instantly. Too hard. Too clean. My breathing felt loud. I looked at the folder again. And that's when I noticed it. There were fingerprints on the paper now. Fresh. Not mine. Still slightly wet. Like someone had just turned the pages moments ago. I stepped back from the table slowly. The tape machine clicked again, even though I had turned it off. It started rewinding on its own. Vast, aggressive, like it was impatient. Then stopped and played a new recording. Different tone, different atmosphere. This one had background noise. Rain, distant sirens, a city interrogation room. But the voice that spoke first made my stomach twist. It was me. Clear, calm, professional. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw. I froze, because I had never said that sentence in my life. Not here. Not anywhere. The suspect answered immediately. I already told you I saw you there. My breathing slowed. Confused now. The tape continued. My voice again. That's not possible. A pause. Then the suspect replied softly. You always say that, every time you forget. I stepped closer to the recorder. My hands shaking harder now. Every time I forget. What did that mean? The tape suddenly shifted again. The room sounds changed. Now it was quiet. No rain. No sirens. Just stillness. And the suspect spoke again. But this time his voice was closer. Almost whispering. You're not the first investigator. My throat went dry. I leaned in. What are you talking about? I whispered. But the tape answered instead of silence. You've asked me that before. My head started spinning slightly. I looked at the mirror glass again. Still black. But now something moved behind it. A shadow. Standing still. Watching. I stepped back instantly. No, I said under my breath. No, this is just audio manipulation. Old files, corrupted recordings. The tape laughed softly. And then the female voice returned. Very calm now. Almost gentle. You're trying to stabilize the story again. A pause. Then, but it won't stay stable anymore. The tape suddenly stopped. Silence returned. But not peaceful silence. Waiting silence. I reached toward the recorder slowly. And that's when I saw it. A second tape had appeared on the table. I hadn't placed it there. I was sure of it. It was labeled Case 1, Original Interview Recording. My fingers hesitated before touching it. Original. That word didn't belong in anything I had seen so far. I inserted it carefully. The machine accepted it immediately. Too easily. It started playing. But this time, no voices came first. Just breathing. Then my own voice again. But different. Weaker. You shouldn't be recording this. My heart stopped for a second. Because that didn't sound like an investigator. It sounded like someone being recorded against their will. A second voice answered. Not the suspect. Not the female. A new one. Low. Controlled. Familiar in a way I couldn't place. We always recorded. A pause. Then, it helps the cycle reset. My fingers tightened. What cycle? I whispered. The tape answered immediately. The one you keep forgetting. The room started feeling smaller again. Walls pressing in slightly. The one-way glass darkening further. The breathing on the tape grew louder. Like whoever was speaking was now inside the room with me. Not on the recording anymore. Present. The voice continued. You asked the same questions in every version. A pause. And every version you stayed. My head shook slightly. No, I don't remember any of this. The tape went silent for a moment. Then the final line came through. Soft. Close. Almost behind my ear now. That's why you were reassigned. The recorder clicked off on its own. The tape ejected slowly, falling onto the table. And as it landed, I noticed something carved into the metal beside it. Small letters, scratched repeatedly until they were almost unreadable. But I could still make it out. Interrogator 7. My chest tightened, because I didn't know if that was a job title, or how many times I had already been here. Behind the glass, the shadow was still standing, closer now than before. And for the first time, it felt like it was waiting for me to start the recording again, from the beginning. The lock wasn't supposed to open. That's what the sign said. Evidence room, authorized personnel only, access DE&IED without clearance. But the key in my hand turned anyway. Slow, too smooth, like the lock had been waiting for me specifically. I stopped breathing for a second as the metal door clicked open. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft release, like something inside had finally agreed to let me in. The corridor behind me was silent, too silent. No footsteps, no humming. Even the building felt like it had stepped back to watch. I pushed the door open. Cold air hit my face immediately. Not normal cold, storage cold, the kind that feels like it hasn't moved in years. The room inside was smaller than I expected. Concrete walls, one flickering light above, and rows of evidence shelves stretching too far into darkness. Too organized for a place that was supposed to be sealed. I stepped inside slowly. My shoes echoed once, then again slightly delayed. I froze. That delay again, like the room wasn't fully synced with me. I looked around. Everything had labels, clear plastic boxes, files, old recording devices, photos pinned on boards. But something was wrong immediately. Because the labels weren't random. They were repeating. Same case numbers, same dates, again and again. I walked toward the nearest shelf. My fingers hovered over a box labeled Case 14, Incident Log. That number again, the same one from the archive files. I opened it carefully. Inside was a folder, thick, heavier than it should have been. The first page made my stomach tighten. It was a report, but not new. It was identical to the one I had seen before, at the investigation lodge. The same incident description, same wording, same structure, but the date was different. Older, then newer, then older again. My brow tightened. I flipped the page. Another copy. Same case. Different timestamp. I kept flipping, and every page was the same case report, but slightly altered each time, like it was being rewritten across different versions of time. I stepped back slowly. No, I whispered. My voice sounded too loud in the room. The light above flickered once, then stabilized. Behind me, a shelf creaked. I turned instantly. Nothing moved, but I noticed something new. One of the evidence boxes had a red tag blinking faintly, just like in the archive room. I approached it slowly, my heartbeat rising again. The label read, Cycle file active. I swallowed hard. Active. In a sealed room. I pulled it out carefully. Inside was a cassette tape. Old, dusty, but still warm when I touched it, like it had been recently used. My hand shook slightly as I held it. I looked around. There was a small recorder on the desk nearby, already plugged in, already waiting. I didn't put it there. I was sure of that, but it was already on. A red light blinking. Recording. I hesitated for a second, then inserted the tape. The machine clicked immediately. No resistance, like it recognized it. Then playback started. First sound, breathing, slow, controlled. Then a voice. Mine, but not exactly. Tired, calmer than I've ever sounded. If you're hearing this, then it's starting again. My chest tightened. I stepped closer instinctively. The recording continued. You found the evidence room. That means you didn't stop the cycle. A pause, then a soft shift in tone. Or maybe you're me at a different point in it. I froze. Different point. The tape continued. The case repeats every time it reaches closure, but closure never holds. My fingers clenched slightly. The shelves around me suddenly felt taller. Closer, like they were leaning in. The voice on the tape continued. You'll notice the files first, then the recordings, then the people who shouldn't exist. My breath slowed, because I had already seen all three. The voice paused again, then added quietly. And then you start remembering things that never happened to you. I stepped back. No, I whispered. I don't remember anything like that. The tape didn't respond immediately. Just static. Then, a second voice entered. Not mine. Not familiar. But calm. Almost scientific. You always say that at this stage. My skin went cold. I looked at the recorder. What stage? I said quietly. The tape answered immediately. Stage 4 of the cycle. My stomach dropped. Stage 4. I didn't know why that sounded worse than everything else. The shelves around me creaked again. Not random. Synchronized. Like something was shifting position across the room. The tape continued. This room exists outside normal records. It stores evidence from every iteration. I frowned slightly. Iteration, I whispered. The voice replied. Every time the case resets, this room resets too, but it never forgets. A long pause. Then the most unsettling part. It remembers you differently each time. I stepped back from the desk. My mind was trying to reject it, but the evidence around me wasn't helping. Because now I noticed something I hadn't before. Some of the boxes had dates scratched and overwritten. Layered. Multiple years written over each other. Like time itself had been edited here. The tape suddenly hissed, then changed tone. Vaster. Urgent. You need to understand something. My breath caught. The investigator is not assigned to the case. A pause. The investigator is part of the case. My chest tightened. I shook my head slightly. No, I'm just reviewing files, that's all. The tape responded instantly. That's what you always say. Silence. Then, footsteps. From inside the room. Slow. Measured. Not mine. I turned instantly. Nothing visible. But I heard it now. Behind the shelves. Moving between aisles. Not rushing. Not hiding. Just walking like it belonged here. The tape continued. Don't trust what you read. It changes depending on which version of you is listening. My hands trembled slightly. What version? I whispered. No answer. Just static. Then the voice returned. Lower now. Closer. You're not the first to open this room. A pause. You're just the first to notice it open back. My breathing got heavier. The footsteps stopped somewhere in the shelves. Right behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't. The tape continued one final time. If you reach the end of this recording, it means you've already triggered the reset. My eyes widened. Reset. Before I could react, the shelves around me made a single synchronized sound. Click. Every evidence box shifted slightly. In perfect unison. Like the room had just acknowledged something. The voice on the tape softened. Almost gentle now. And if you're hearing me clearly, A pause. Then you're already inside the next cycle. The tape stopped. Silence, but not empty silence. Waiting silence. I slowly turned toward the shelves and saw something that made my blood run cold. Every evidence box now had a new label. Printed, fresh, updated, all of them reading the same thing. Case holder, current investigator. My breath stopped completely because I realized the truth too late. This room wasn't storing evidence of the case. It was storing evidence of me. And somewhere deep in the shelves, something shifted again, like it was preparing to file me under the next version. The name was already crossed out, but I still felt like I had met him. That was the first thought that hit me when I saw the personnel file lying on the desk. Not who is this? Not what happened. Just, I know him, even though I shouldn't. The file was old, paper yellowed at the edges, ink slightly faded like it had been handled too many times or too many times erased. Officer Assignment Log, Unit 7 Archive Site. My fingers hovered before touching it, because something felt off immediately. The room behind me was quiet, but not empty quiet. It felt occupied, like someone was standing just outside my line of sight, waiting for me to confirm what I was about to read. I opened the file. The first page had a photo, black and white, cracked slightly down the middle. A man in uniform, straight posture, neutral expression. But his eyes weren't neutral. They looked tired, not physically, mentally, like he had seen something that refused to leave him alone. Under the photo, the name was printed, Officer HKHAWGA, but someone had drawn a thick black line through it. Not once, multiple times, like they were trying to erase him, but failing every time. I frowned slightly. Then I flipped the page. Empty. No assignment details. No transfer record. No incident history. Just blank paper. But the pages weren't clean. They had impressions, like something had been written there before and removed too quickly. My fingers pressed lightly on the paper, and for a second, I felt warmth. Not ink, not moisture. Warmth, like the words had only just left the page. I pulled my hand back fast. What the hell, I whispered. The lodge behind me creaked softly. Wood settling, or something walking slowly upstairs. I didn't look up. Not yet, because I already knew something was wrong with the officer file. And I needed answers before the building started giving them on its own. I flipped again. This time a report appeared, but it wasn't printed like the others. It looked handwritten, in my handwriting. My throat tightened. I leaned closer. The text read, "He was never officially assigned, but he always appears in the logs after the third review cycle." I blinked slowly. Third cycle. That word again. Cycle. I felt my chest tighten slightly. I turned the page. Another line. This officer reports to rooms that are not on the map. I stopped breathing for a second, because I had seen rooms like that already. The evidence room. The interrogation room. Spaces that shouldn't exist but did anyway. I turned another page. This time the writing changed. Slower, heavier. As long as he is remembered, the lodge continues to function. A pause. Then the last line. If he is forgotten completely, everything resets. My fingers froze on the paper. A reset again. I had heard that word too many times now. Too many files. Too many recordings. Too many voices, insisting the same thing in different forms. I leaned back slightly, and that's when I noticed something strange. The chair behind the desk was slightly pulled out, just a few centimeters, like someone had just stood up from it. I hadn't touched it. I was sure of that. My eyes scanned the room slowly. The lodge felt heavier now. Not darker, heavier, like the air itself had more weight than before. I stepped away from the desk carefully, and that's when I heard it. A pen clicking. Behind me. Slow. Once. Then again. I turned instantly. Nothing. Just the empty corner of the room. But the sound didn't stop. Clicking. 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 Coming from somewhere I couldn't see. I swallowed hard. This is just echo delay, I whispered to myself. Old building, sound bouncing. But even I didn't believe it. The clicking stopped. Silence returned. Then a voice spoke. Calm. Right behind my left shoulder. You always say that when you start remembering. I froze completely. My entire body locked. Not because of fear alone, but recognition. That voice. It wasn't new. I had heard it before. Not in this lodge. Not in recordings. In thought. Slowly I turned. Nothing was there. But the chair behind the desk was now fully pushed in. Perfectly aligned. Like someone had just finished sitting there. I stepped back. What do you want? I said quietly. No answer. Just the faint sound of paper turning. I looked at the file again. The pages were flipping on their own now. Slowly, one by one. But no wind. No movement in the room. Just the file reacting like it was alive. It stopped on a page I hadn't seen before. A new one. Fresh ink. Fresh writing. This wasn't there a minute ago. It read, Officer Kawaja was assigned to oversee investigators who lose track of their own case history. My breath slowed. The lodge creaked again. But this time, above me, right above the ceiling, slow footsteps, walking, measuring, like someone packing directly over my head. I looked up instinctively. The ceiling light flickered once, then stabilized. But in that flicker, I saw something, a shadow, standing above, looking down through the ceiling like it wasn't solid. I stepped back fast. The file fell from my hands. It landed open, and when I looked down again, the pages were blank, every single one, like nothing had ever been written. My pulse spiked. No, 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 I whispered. Then the radio on the desk crackled. I hadn't turned it on. Static filled the room. Then a voice came through. Not distorted, not broken, clear. My office is still occupied. My stomach dropped. Because that voice, it wasn't on any recording I had reviewed. I turned slowly toward the radio. It continued. You've been sitting in it for a while now. I stepped back instinctively. The chair behind the desk creaked again. Just once, like someone adjusting their position. The radio clicked off. Silence returned. But the silence didn't last long, because I heard footsteps now. Inside the room. Behind me. Slow. Measured. Not rushing. Not hiding. Just approaching. I didn't turn. Not yet. Because something in me already knew. If I turned too quickly, I would confirm something I wasn't ready to accept. The footsteps stopped directly behind me. A pause. Then a soft voice spoke again. Close, calm, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. You're doing better than the last one. My breath caught. Last one. I finally turned. Slowly, carefully. The room looked empty. Still empty, but the chair was no longer at the desk. It was now facing me, perfectly, as if inviting me to sit. The radio flickered back on one last time. A final line came through. Soft, almost like a warning that had been repeated too many times to still sound urgent. Don't try to find Officer Kawaja. A pause. Then, he finds you when you start remembering him. The radio died. Complete silence. But as I stood there, frozen, staring at the chair, I realized something worse. My own handwriting on the file wasn't describing him. It was describing me. And somewhere deep inside the lodge, someone was already preparing the next report. The gate was already open. That was the first wrong thing. A broken iron gate in the middle of nowhere shouldn't open like it was expected to be used. But it stood there, slightly swaying in the wind like it had just been pushed moments ago. And beyond it, the estate waited. Too quiet, too complete. Even in decay, it looked like something was still taking care of it. I remember stopping my car on the dirt road, engine ticking in the silence. No birds, no insects, just that strange pressure in the air, like the place didn't want sound inside it. The manor itself rose behind the trees. Old brick, dark windows, a roof half covered in moss, but not evenly. That was the first detail that made my chest tighten. The moss wasn't random. It formed lines, paths, like someone had been walking on the roof. Regularly. Recently. I stepped out of the car slowly. The moment my feet touched the ground, the silence felt heavier. Like it noticed me. The gravel under my shoes was too clean. Not abandoned clean. Maintained clean. I looked around again. No signs of life. No vehicles. No animals. But something small pulled my attention immediately. A wooden sign near the driveway. Half broken but still readable. Estate maintenance log, do not disturb. My throat tightened. Maintenance. Here. I walked closer to the manor, slower now. Each step felt wrong, like I was interrupting something that was still happening. The front door was slightly open. Just a crack. Not wide. Just enough. Like someone had gone inside recently and forgot to close it. Or didn't need to. I pushed it gently. It opened without resistance. No creak. That should have been my second warning. Inside, the air was warmer. Not welcoming warm. Breathing warm. Like the house had just exhaled before I entered. I stepped into a hallway lined with portraits. Old family photos. All faces slightly faded. But the eyes were too sharp. Too intact. Every portrait seemed to be watching me from different angles. I tried not to focus on them, but they followed anyway. The floorboards were polished. Too polished. No dust. No debris. Just faint scratches running in long parallel lines. Like something heavy had been dragged through here repeatedly. I moved forward slowly. My footsteps felt too loud. Too disrespectful. At the far end of the hallway, I saw a small table. And on it, a clipboard. I shouldn't have gone near it. But I did. Because nothing about this place made sense anymore. The clipboard had a paper clipped to it. Daily estate checklist. My fingers hovered before touching it. The paper was fresh. Not old. Not archived. Fresh. Like it had been filled today. I read the first line. Front gate inspected, functioning. My stomach tightened. I had just seen it open on its own. I continued reading. Roof moisture levels checked, stable. I thought of the moss patterns. My throat went dry. Next line. Interior presence confirmed, active. I froze. Active. I looked around instinctively. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt aware, like it had just been described correctly by the paper I was holding. I flipped the page. There was only one more line, written in different handwriting. Smaller, almost rushed. If you are reading this, you are now part of the maintenance cycle. My chest tightened hard. I stepped back from the table immediately. The clipboard slipped from my hand and hit the floor. Too loud. Too final. The sound echoed down the hallway, longer than it should have. And then, something answered it. From upstairs, a soft thud, like a footstep. Slow, deliberate. I looked up instantly. The ceiling above the hallway was dark wood. No movement visible. But I heard it again. Step. Pause. Step. Not random. Measured. Like someone walking with purpose. My breath slowed. I should have left. Every instinct said that. But something in me needed to understand what maintenance cycle meant. I started toward the stairs. Each step closer made the air feel tighter, heavier, like I was walking deeper into something that already knew my name. The staircase was wide, old marble, but clean, too clean again. Not even fingerprints on the railing. I placed my hand on it anyway. Cold, freshly wiped cold. As I climbed, the footsteps above stopped. Complete silence followed. That silence was worse than the sound, because now I didn't know if I was being followed or being waited for. I reached the top floor. A long corridor stretched out. Doors on both sides, all slightly open, all identical spacing, perfect symmetry. And at the far end, a door fully closed, the only closed door in the entire hallway. I walked slowly toward it. Each step felt like it was being recorded somewhere I couldn't see. Halfway down the corridor, I noticed something strange. Each door had a small plaque. I leaned closer to one. It read, Room 1 daily check required. I moved to the next. Room 2 daily check required. Every door. Same message. Same structure. Same warning disguised as routine. Then I saw it. A fresh set of footprints on the floor. Dust-free wood, but still footprints, leading directly to the closed door at the end. My breath tightened. Someone had been here. Recently. Very recently. I followed them slowly. The corridor felt narrower the closer I got. Like the walls were adjusting, breathing with me. When I reached the final door, I stopped. There was no handle, just a flat surface, but something was carved into the wood. Small letters, almost hidden. Maintenance office. My stomach dropped. Maintenance again. I pressed my ear against the door. Nothing at first. Then, paper shuffling, soft breathing, a pen scratching, someone working inside. I stepped back slightly. My hand hovered. Then I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. This time the scratching stopped. Silence. Then a voice came from inside. Calm, neutral, male. You're late for inspection. My body froze completely because I didn't recognize the voice, but it sounded like it recognized me. I swallowed hard. I'm not part of any inspection, I said quietly. A pause. Then the voice replied. That's what the last one said too. My chest tightened. Last one, I repeated. The door didn't open, but the voice came closer. You'll understand when you finish your route. My breath slowed. Route, I asked. A soft sound like papers being turned. Then, start from room 1. My eyes drifted to the corridor behind me. Every door suddenly felt heavier, more real, more active. Then the voice added something that made my stomach drop completely. And don't skip any rooms this time. A long silence followed. Then the pen started writing again inside the room, like I was already expected to leave. I stepped back slowly, my mind racing. Maintenance cycle, daily checks, rooms assigned like tasks, and me, somehow already inside it. As I turned toward the corridor again, I noticed something new. One of the door plaques had changed. It now read, Room 0, Current Inspector. My breath stopped, because I hadn't seen Room 0 before, and I was standing right in front of it. The first thing I noticed was the soil. It was moving, not in a normal way, not wind, not insects. It looked like the ground itself was breathing in reverse. I stood at the edge of the garden and felt my chest tighten immediately. Because gardens don't behave like this. Not anywhere in the real world. But this one wasn't behaving like anything I knew. The house behind me was silent again. That same estate, that same impossible maintenance feeling still hanging in the air. But all my attention was locked on the garden now. Because the plants were wrong. I stepped forward slowly, each step sinking slightly into soft soil that felt too warm. Not warm from sun, warm like something alive under it. The first row of plants looked normal at a glance, but then I saw them move. A leaf slowly folding inward. Not growing, ungrowing, like time was pulling it back into the stem. I froze instantly. My breathing slowed without permission. No, that's not possible, I whispered. A small vine near my foot twitched, then retracted into the ground, like it was ashamed of being seen. I stepped back immediately, and that's when I heard it. A soft rustling behind me. I turned fast. Nothing. Only the garden. Still, but now it felt like it was watching me back. I forced myself to look again. Row by row. The plants weren't random. They were arranged. Too perfectly spaced. Like a system. Like an experiment. Each plant had a small metal tag stuck beside it. I walked closer to the nearest one. My fingers trembled as I pulled the tag slightly. It read, Specimen 12, Phase 3. Phase 3. My stomach tightened. I moved to the next plant. Same tag. Specimen 11, Phase 3. I frowned. Why would every plant have a phase label? And why were they counting down? I walked deeper into the garden slowly. The soil under my feet became softer, almost sponge-like, each step leaving a deeper imprint than before. Too deep, like the ground was remembering me. Then I saw something that made my breath stop. A flower bloomed in front of me, slowly opening, beautiful at first glance, but wrong in motion. Petals unfolded backward, unraveling into bud form instead of blooming outward. It was growing in reverse. I stepped closer without thinking. The flower reacted. It snapped shut instantly, like it had been caught doing something forbidden. My chest tightened hard. "What is this place?" I whispered. A voice answered immediately. "Not behind me. Not ahead. Everywhere. You're observing phase regression." I froze completely. That voice, same tone as the house earlier, same calm control, but now it felt closer. I turned slowly. Nothing visible, but the garden felt more aware than before. "What is phase regression?" I asked quietly. A pause. Then the voice replied, "When life is forced to repeat itself, it eventually forgets how to move forward." I swallowed hard. That doesn't answer my question. Another pause. Then, "It's not meant to." A sudden rustle exploded to my left. I turned instantly. A tree branch was shrinking. Not breaking. Not falling. Shrinking back into the trunk like it was being erased. My heart started beating faster now. This wasn't decay. This was reversal. I backed away slowly. Each step felt like the garden was adjusting itself to follow me. Then I saw footprints. Mine, but wrong. They were disappearing as I looked at them. Not fading. Undoing. Like the ground refused to keep evidence of my presence. My throat went dry. "No, no, no," I whispered. The voice returned again. Calmer now. Almost disappointed. "You shouldn't be here during regression hours." Regression hours. My mind caught on that immediately. "What hours?" I asked quickly. A long silence followed. Then, "The hours when the garden remembers how it was before you arrived." My stomach dropped. Before I arrived. Something about that sentence felt heavier than everything else. I turned toward the house instinctively. But the garden path behind me had changed. It wasn't the same direction anymore. The layout had shifted. Subtle, but undeniable. The path I had used to enter was gone. My breathing quickened. "This is not real," I said again, louder this time. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. A plant nearby bent toward me. Slowly, deliberately, like it was listening. Then it straightened again, revering the movement, like it had reconsidered. The voice spoke again. "You are part of the cycle now." I shook my head. "I'm not part of anything. I just came here too." I stopped, because I didn't actually remember why I came here. That realization hit harder than the garden itself. My mind flickered, empty for a second, like someone had removed the reason and left only the action. I stepped back again. The soil under my feet softened more. My balance shifted slightly, and then I saw it. At the far end of the garden, a small bench, wooden, old, and perfectly clean. Someone was sitting there, facing away from me. I couldn't see their face, only their outline. Still, perfectly still. My throat tightened. "No one was there before," I whispered. The voice responded softly. "They were always there. You just weren't at the right stage to notice." My legs felt weak. I forced myself to move closer, one step at a time. The garden didn't resist anymore. It felt like it was allowing me forward now. The plants around me stopped moving, completely still, like they were holding their breath. I reached halfway. The figure on the bench still hadn't moved. Not once, but something about them felt familiar. Too familiar. My chest tightened again. I stepped closer, and then the figure slowly started revering their motion. Not turning, not standing, unsitting. Their body moved backward into a standing position without ever bending forward. My breath stopped. This was impossible. The figure finally turned around, and I couldn't see a face, only blurred skin, like the image was being rewound frame by frame. The voice spoke one final time. Close now, right behind me. You've met this version before. I turned instantly. Nothing there, but the garden was no longer the same. The plants had reset again, all standing straight, all perfectly aligned, like nothing had ever happened. But my footprints were gone, and the bench was empty, freshly dusted, as if no one had ever sat there at all. My breathing slowed slightly, confused, relieved for half a second, until I looked down at my hand. Soil was rising back into it, undoing itself, and slowly forming words across my skin. 3 simple words, not written, rewritten. Welcome back. The garden rustled once more, and this time, I didn't feel like I had entered it. I felt like I had been returned to it. I woke up because the wall was talking. Not knocking, not scratching. Talking. Low voices just behind my head, like someone pressed their mouth into the stone and started whispering secrets meant only for the building. At first I didn't move. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was pipes, old plumbing, wind in cracks, anything normal. But the voices, they had rhythm, like a conversation already in the middle of something serious. I slowly turned my head toward the wall. Cold stone, damp in places, nothing there. Then I heard my name. Very soft. Not shouted, not clear. Just shaped like my name. And that's when my body finally reacted. My heart jumped so hard it hurt. I sat up in bed, holding my breath like the air itself might betray me. The room was small, cheap furniture, a single bulb above me that I never turned on at night because it flickered like it was tired of existing. The voices continued. Now I could tell there were at least 2 of them, maybe 3. They weren't speaking English clearly. It felt mixed, broken, like someone trying to remember how to be human through language. I leaned closer to the wall without meaning to, like something inside me wanted to understand it. And then I heard something worse. A reply from inside my room. Not the wall, from the corner behind me. I froze so completely, I think even my thoughts stopped. Slowly I turned. Nothing, just my wardrobe, slightly open. But I hadn't left it open. The voices in the wall stopped for 1 second. Just one. That silence was louder than everything else. Then they started again. Faster this time, like they knew I was listening. I got out of bed, feet cold on the floor, and walked toward the wardrobe. Every step felt too loud, like the building was judging me for moving. I opened the door fully. Inside just closed. But something felt wrong about the space, like the air inside it didn't match the air outside. That's when I noticed it. A faint sound inside the wood. Not the wall anymore. Inside the wardrobe itself. Whispering. I slammed the door shut immediately and stepped back. My breathing got shallow. My brain kept trying to find logic, but logic wasn't showing up. Only fear. The voices outside, inside the wall, had changed tone. They sounded amused, like they were reacting to me. I backed away until my legs hit the bed. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A thin line on the wall. A crack. It hadn't been there before. I swear on everything I remember. It was vertical, running from floor to almost shoulder height, like someone had drawn a careful cut into the stone while I was asleep. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared, because the crack wasn't empty. Something darker moved inside it, like depth where there shouldn't be depth. And then the whisper came again, right beside my ear this time. Not from the wall, not from the wardrobe, from behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. Nothing, only my room, only me. But now I understood something. The voices weren't coming from the house. They were coming through it. Like the walls were not the source, just the surface. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking too much to unlock it properly. The screen light felt too bright, too honest, like it didn't belong in this place. I checked the time. 2:43 a.m. Perfect, because every horror story in my head suddenly felt too real at 2:43 a.m. I tried calling the landlord. No signal. Of course. I walked to the door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing outside. No footsteps, no wind, no other tenants. Just silence. But behind that silence, I still heard them. Inside the walls. Still talking. Still aware. I slowly opened my door. The hallway was dim. One weak bulb flickering at the end like it was trying to stay awake, but losing the fight. I stepped out, and immediately regretted it. Because the whispering didn't stop. It followed me. Not louder. Closer. Like it was moving with me through the structure itself. I walked slowly down the hallway, eyes scanning every door. All closed. All quiet. Except mine. Mine was still whispering behind me. I turned back once. My door was shut. But the crack in the wall inside my room, I could see it from here. Even through the door. That should not have been possible. My chest tightened. I told myself I was hallucinating. Sleep deprivation, stress, cheap building making my mind invent things. But then I heard something new. A laugh. Soft, controlled. From inside the wall, directly next to me in the hallway. I stopped walking. The laughter stopped too, like it was watching me stop. I pressed my palm against the hallway wall. Cold, normal, solid. Then a voice spoke directly into my hand. I remember you. I jerked my hand away like I had been burned. My breath broke. That was not imagination. That was contact. I stepped back, shaking, and looked around the hallway again. No cameras. No people. Just closed doors. And something behind them listening. The whispering increased again, now spreading along the walls like infection. Every room had it. Every surface carried it. I started walking faster, trying to reach the stairs. But halfway there I stopped. Because I heard footsteps. Above me. On a floor that officially doesn't exist in this building. I looked up. Ceiling. Dark cracked plaster. And above that, more footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Walking in circles. I whispered without meaning to. There's no floor up there. And the footsteps stopped. The building felt like it leaned in closer. Then the voice came again. Not from one place. From everywhere at once. You are early. My throat went dry. Early for what? I didn't wait for an answer. I ran. Down the stairs, fast, almost falling. The whispering turned into a low hum now, like the entire structure was breathing through its walls. When I reached the ground floor, I expected relief. I didn't get it, because the lobby lights were off. but I had seen them on before. I stopped at the bottom step. My reflection in the glass door looked wrong. Not distorted. Delayed. Like it moved a fraction of a second after I did. Behind my reflection, something stood in the hallway upstairs, watching me. But when I turned, nothing. I unlocked the main door and stepped outside into the cold air. For a moment, everything went silent. No voices, no whispers, no building breathing behind me. Just night. I should have left. I should have kept walking. But I made the mistake of looking back. Every window of the building was lit now. All of them. And behind each window, someone was standing, not moving, just watching me. And every single one of them had their head tilted slightly, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. Then my phone vibrated in my hand. A notification. No number. No sender. Just one line. We're still inside the walls. I dropped the phone. And in that exact moment, the whispering started again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the building anymore. It was coming from my own skin. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for my own body to betray me. Because after the skin whispering, I didn't trust sleep anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it again. That soft movement under my skin, like something learning how to speak from the inside. And then I heard it. The house settling. But it wasn't normal settling. It felt like breathing. Slow, careful. Like the building was watching if I was still awake. I got up before sunrise. My legs were stiff, like I hadn't moved in years instead of hours. The hallway outside my room was empty again, too empty. Even the silence felt arranged, like someone had cleaned it. I walked toward the main hall without thinking. I don't know why. Something was pulling me there. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something worse. The air changed before I even saw it. Heavier, colder, like the house was holding its breath in that one space. And then I saw it. The portrait. It wasn't new. I had seen it yesterday. A large old painting hanging on the far wall of the main hall. A family portrait. A man, a woman, 2 children. All dressed in old formal clothes. But I remember thinking it looked fake, too perfect, like a hotel decoration trying to pretend it had history. But now, it felt wrong, because the faces weren't the same. I stopped walking. My throat tightened. The man in the painting was looking directly at me, not in a general direction. At me. I slowly stepped closer, not wanting to, but unable to stop. The closer I got, the worse it became. The eyes weren't painted still anymore. They were aware. The woman in the portrait blinked. Once, slow, deliberate. My mind tried to reject it immediately, like throwing the thought away before it could exist. But my eyes didn't cooperate. The painting was changing. Not all at once. Subtle shifts. Like memory rewriting itself. The children were now facing slightly differently than before. As if they had turned to follow something behind me. I turned instantly. Nothing. Only the empty hallway. But I knew I wasn't alone in it anymore. When I looked back at the portrait, the man's expression had changed. He was smiling now. Not warmly. Not humanly. Like he recognized me. Like he had been waiting for me to notice. My mouth went dry. I whispered without thinking, "What is this place?" The painting didn't answer. But the woman did. Her mouth moved slightly. No sound came out. but I felt it anyway, inside my head. Not words spoken, words placed. You're sleeping too late. My body went cold. I stepped back so fast, I nearly hit the wall behind me. The portrait remained still for one full second. Then all four figures blinked at the same time. I should have run, but I didn't, because something worse happened. I remembered something I shouldn't have known. I remembered standing in this hall before. Not yesterday, not this week, but earlier, in a version of this same house that felt older, heavier, more real. And I was standing in front of this same painting, watching it watch me. My breathing broke. No, I whispered. No, I just moved in. But the words felt weak. Even I didn't believe them fully. The portrait's smile widened slightly, just enough to feel intentional. I turned away from it, forcing myself to walk toward the kitchen, anything to break its gaze. But as I walked, I felt it. The sensation of being followed without movement. Not footsteps. Attention. Like the painting didn't stay behind. It stayed on me. The kitchen was colder than the rest of the house. Too clean for an old building. The sink was dry, no smell of rust or rot, almost sterile. That was the first thing that felt wrong in a different way. Because this house was never supposed to be clean. It was supposed to be abandoned. I poured water just to hear a normal sound. The tap ran too smoothly, like it was used often. Behind me, something creaked in the hallway. I turned immediately. Nothing there, but the portrait was now visible from the kitchen doorway. And it was closer. I froze. That wasn't possible. It was still hanging in the main hall. I had seen it seconds ago, but now it was closer. Like the house itself had shortened the distance. The man in the painting wasn't smiling anymore. Now he looked tired, like he had been doing this for a long time. Watching people notice, watching them try to understand. The woman's eyes shifted slightly, following me. I backed away from the doorway slowly. My heart was loud in my ears now. And then I heard it. A sound from upstairs. A soft drag, like a chair being moved. I looked up instinctively. No floor above me should have been active. The upper level was supposed to be empty, unassigned, closed, dead space. But now I heard movement. Slow, careful. Someone walking with purpose. I whispered, "There's no one up there." And the portrait responded. Not with words, with change. All four figures suddenly turned their heads toward the ceiling. In perfect sync, like they were listening to the same thing I was. The sound above stopped. Silence dropped instantly. Too clean, too sharp. And then the child in the painting looked directly at me and mouthed one word clearly. Behind. I turned instantly. Nothing, but the kitchen door was no longer open. It was slightly closed, just enough to suggest someone had touched it. My breath stopped completely, because I hadn't closed it, and I hadn't heard it move. I walked slowly toward it, every step heavier than the last. When I reached it, I pressed my hand against the wood. Cold, still, normal, almost comforting, until I noticed the faint outline on the surface. Smudges, fingerprints, fresh, from the inside. I pulled my hand back like the door had burned me. The portrait's voice came again. Not through sound, through thought. "You're not the first one to wake up here." My knees went weak for a second, because I didn't hear it like imagination. I heard it like memory being inserted. I turned back toward the hall, The painting was now fully in view again, and the man inside it was no longer smiling. He looked like he was trying to warn me, but couldn't move enough to do it properly. The woman's eyes were wet now, like she had been crying for a long time. And the children were gone. Not painted, not erased, just missing from the frame. Empty space where they should have been. I stepped closer again, despite everything screaming not to. And that's when I saw it, written faintly under the painting, almost invisible unless you were too close. A name. My name. Not carved, not painted, but already there, like it had always been there. My throat tightened so hard I couldn't breathe properly. Behind me, the house creaked again. Slow, deliberate, like it was settling into a new shape. And the portrait was now completely different. It showed only one figure. Me, standing in the same hallway, looking at myself. And in the painting, my eyes were already open. The gate wasn't locked. That was the first thing that felt wrong. A psychiatric estate like this in the middle of nowhere should not have an open gate, not after all these years. But it stood slightly ajar, swinging slowly in the wind like it was waiting for me. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter. The road behind me already felt farther away than it should have, like the place was pulling distance out of reality. And I hadn't even stepped inside yet. The contract said simple things. Caretaker 1 month, basic maintenance, record keeping, no patient access. But the name of the place wasn't even clear on the documents. Just a blank space where it should have been. That should have been my warning. But I needed the money. So I drove in. The moment my tires crossed the gate line, the air changed. Not colder, heavier, like something invisible had leaned closer to the car. The estate appeared slowly through the trees. A large building, old stone, broken windows, but not fully abandoned. That was the first lie, because there were lights inside. Not many, just enough to suggest someone was still living here. I stopped the car without thinking. My breath slowed. Impossible, I whispered. I checked the documents again. Abandoned psychiatric facility. Closed for over 15 years. No staff. No patients. No electricity listed. But the building in front of me was breathing with faint light. I got out slowly. The gravel under my shoes felt too soft, like it had been walked on too much recently. That was the second lie. The air smelled clean. Too clean. Not decay, not rot. Almost disinfected. Like someone was still trying to keep the place alive. I walked toward the entrance. The main doors were already open. Just a crack. Waiting. I pushed them gently. They opened without resistance. Inside, the hallway stretched long and narrow. Old tiles, peeling paint, but no dust. That's when I stopped again. No dust, not even in corners. A building this old should be drowning in it. But the floors looked recently cleaned, like someone had been walking here every day. I took one step inside, then another. My footsteps sounded wrong. Too loud. Too sharp. Like the building was amplifying me. There was a reception desk to my right. A single chair behind it. Empty, but warm. I don't know how I knew. It just felt warm. Like someone had stood up seconds ago. A small bell sat on the desk. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I rang it. I don't know why I did that. Habit maybe. Or stupidity. The The sound echoed too long. Not normal echo. Extended. Like the building didn't want the sound to end. And then I heard movement. Somewhere deeper inside. Slow footsteps. Measured. Not rushing. Not surprised. Like whoever it was had been expecting me. I turned toward the corridor. Nothing there. But the footsteps stopped exactly when I looked. That timing made my stomach tighten. "Hello," I called out. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded smaller. Like the building was shrinking it. No answer. Only silence. Then a new sound. Paper flipping. Close. Behind the reception desk. I stepped forward carefully and leaned over. The chair was still empty, but the visitor log was open. Fresh ink. Fresh writing. My name was already on it. Signed. Dated. Today. My hand went cold. I touched the page. The ink was still slightly wet. That should not have been possible. I hadn't signed anything. I had just arrived. I pulled my hand back slowly. Behind me, the hallway light flickered once. Just once. Enough to change the shape of the shadows. And in that flicker, I saw someone standing at the end of the corridor. Still, watching, then gone. I turned fast. Nothing, but my heartbeat didn't slow. It got worse. I stepped back from the desk. The building creaked softly. Not structural. Intentional. Like something shifting its attention. I decided I needed to find the supervisor. Or anyone. Or at least the power room. Something logical. Something normal. But the moment I walked deeper into the corridor, I noticed something else. The doors. All of them had numbers. But the numbers didn't follow order. They repeated. 12 again. Like the building couldn't decide how it was shaped. I stopped in front of one door. Room 7B. The paint around it was newer than the rest. Fresh. Like it had been repainted recently. The handle turned before I touched it. Slowly. From the inside. I stepped back instantly. The door opened just a crack. No one came out. Only darkness. And then a voice. Soft. Right behind the door. "You're early." I froze. My throat tightened. "Who's there?" I asked. Silence. Then the door closed itself. Slowly. Carefully. Like it didn't want to make noise. I stood there for a long moment, trying to understand what was happening. Early. That word again. Same as the documents. Same as something I couldn't remember properly. I continued walking slower now. Every door I passed felt aware. Like they were tracking me. Then I reached the central hall. And everything changed. Because the hall wasn't empty. It had furniture. Old couches. A table. Even a coffee mug sitting perfectly still in the center. Steam rising. Fresh. I stopped walking completely. "That's not possible," I said out loud. My voice shook. The steam from the mug curled upward like it had just been placed. I looked around slowly. No movement. No people. But the feeling of presence was overwhelming now. Not one person. Many. Watching. Then the lights above me flickered again. Longer this time. When they stabilized, the room had changed. Subtly, but enough. The couch was closer. The mug had moved. The hallway behind me looked shorter. Like the building was compressing itself. And then I saw it. A door at the far end that wasn't there before. Metal, heavy, marked with a sign I couldn't fully read. Caretaker access. My stomach dropped. That wasn't part of the map. I was sure of it. I walked toward it slowly, every instinct telling me not to. But something stronger was pushing me forward. Curiosity mixed with something worse. Recognition. Like I had been here before. I reached the door. My hand hovered over the handle. And then I heard it. Breathing. Right behind me. Close. Too close. I turned. No one. But the mug on the table was gone. The door was now open. And inside, a small office. Neat. Organized. Occupied. On the desk sat a file folder. My name written on it. In handwriting I recognized instantly. Mine. I didn't remember writing it, but I knew I had. Somewhere, at some point, the folder was already open. Pages inside described my job, my arrival, even my reactions, line by line, like someone had been observing me from before I got here, or like I had already lived this. I flipped the page and stopped breathing because the next line said, "Caretaker has arrived again. Cycle restarted." My hands went numb. And behind me, the door I entered through was gone. The moment I realized the building had power, I knew I was already inside something I didn't understand. Because the lights were not supposed to work. Not a single wire in the blueprint had shown active electricity. But the moment I stepped back into the corridor, the overhead bulbs flickered on one by one. Not randomly, in sequence, like someone was walking ahead of me, turning them on as they moved. I stopped breathing. The light at the far end of the hallway turned on first. Then the next. Then the next. Slow, deliberate, controlled. And every light that turned on stayed on. No flicker. No failure. Like the building had been waiting for this exact moment to wake up. I whispered without thinking, "This place doesn't have power." But my voice felt weak in the brightening hallway. Like it didn't belong anymore. The folder in my hand suddenly felt heavier. The one with my name. The one that said I had already arrived before. I forced myself to move forward, step by step, because standing still felt worse. Every time a new light turned on ahead of me, the corridor seemed to stretch. Like the distance between me and the end was not fixed anymore. It was deciding itself. I passed room 7B again. The door was closed now, but the handle slowly rotated a few degrees as I walked by. Not opening, not closing, just reacting, like it was aware I existed. I didn't stop this time. I couldn't afford to, because something deeper was happening now. The building was no longer just watching. It was responding. I reached the central junction of the hallway. 3 directions. Left, right, straight. All of them lit. All of them wrong. Because I suddenly realized something simple that made my stomach twist. I didn't remember how I entered this section. The corridor behind me felt unfamiliar. I turned slowly. The way I came in was gone. Not closed. Not blocked. Gone. Just another wall with a light above it. A working light. That shouldn't exist. My pulse started rising fast. "This isn't possible," I said again, louder this time. But the building didn't care. The lights above me flickered once, and then all 3 paths ahead lit brighter, like it was telling me to choose. I didn't want to choose, but the silence pushed me forward. I took the left corridor. Immediately the air changed. Colder, cleaner, almost sterile again. Like disinfectant had been sprayed through the walls. The lights here were steadier, but that made it worse, because stability meant intention. Halfway down the corridor, I noticed something strange. A camera. Old. Dust-free. Blinking red. Active. I stopped. Slowly looked around. More cameras appeared as I noticed them. Every few meters. Every corner. All active. All watching. I stepped back instinctively. And as I did, the nearest camera tilted slightly. Following me. I felt my throat tighten. "No way," I whispered. The folder in my hand slipped slightly. I caught it quickly, but when I looked down at it, new pages had appeared. I swear they weren't there before. Fresh ink. Fresh printing. My eyes scanned the top line. Caretaker movement recorded. Corridor 3A deviation detected. My hands went cold. That wasn't just observation. That was live tracking. I turned back to the corridor. The cameras were all pointed at me now. Not moving, just observing. Like I had stepped into something that had been recording long before I arrived. Then the lights behind me turned off. One by one. The same sequence as before. But backwards. I turned sharply. The corridor I had just walked through was dark now. Completely dark. Except for one light. At the far end. Still on. Waiting. I felt trapped between two systems. One watching. One guiding. Neither letting me leave. I forced myself forward again, because standing still felt like surrender. As I walked, I started noticing something worse. The walls were changing. Not visually. Structurally. The paint was smoother. The cracks were disappearing behind me. Like the building was repairing itself in real time. But only where I had already been. I wasn't walking through a place. I was being processed through it. The corridor ended in a door. Metal. Heavy. Different from the others. A label above it read, "Electrical Control Room." But the label flickered, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to exist. I reached for the handle. It opened before I touched it. Of course it did. Inside was a small room, filled with old panels, switches, meters, but all of them were active. Not dead, not abandoned. Active. The room was running. I stepped inside slowly. The door closed behind me instantly. Not slammed. Not gently. Just final. The sound echoed too long again. Like the room didn't want to let it end. I turned toward the control panels. Every switch was labeled, but the labels were handwritten. Not factory. Not original. Recent. I leaned closer. One label made my blood go cold. Hallway lighting, observation cycle. Below it, a switch was already in the on position. I touched it. It was warm. I pulled my hand back immediately, because switches don't get warm unless they've been used recently. My eyes moved across the panel. More labels. More systems. But one stood out. A large red one. Room reset sequence. Under it, a smaller note. Do not interrupt during caretaker presence. My breath caught. Caretaker presence. Again that phrase. Like I wasn't a person. I was a condition. Something that activated the system. Behind me, something clicked softly. I turned instantly. Nothing. but one of the meters had changed. The needle had moved upward, like it had detected my attention. The room lights flickered once, and I heard it. A voice, not through speakers, not from outside, from inside the panel itself. Calm, male, clinical. Caretaker is now fully inside the system. My knees nearly gave out. I stepped back slowly. "Who is this?" I said, my voice cracking. Silence. Then another switch flipped on its own. Click. The building responded. Somewhere far away, I heard doors locking. One by one. I ran to the door. It didn't open. Of course it didn't. The handle was dead now. No movement. No response. Like the building had decided I was no longer allowed to leave the room. I turned back to the panels. The red system light was blinking now. Slow, like a heartbeat. And then the voice returned. Closer this time. "You are performing correctly." I shook my head. "No, I'm not part of this." But even as I said it, I saw something in the glass reflection of the control panel. Behind me, a shadow, standing still, watching. I turned fast. Nothing there. But the reflection stayed wrong for a second too long. The shadow didn't leave the glass immediately. It lingered, like it didn't respect physics. Then it vanished. I backed away until I hit the wall. The panels continued humming. Alive. Thinking. And then I understood something I didn't want to understand. The lights weren't turning on by themselves. They were turning on because I was here. Because I was inside the system's awareness. I wasn't observing the building. The building was completing me into its process. The red system light blinked faster, and a new message printed itself on the panel below it. Cycle stability increasing with caretaker awareness. My hands trembled. "What cycle?" I whispered. The panel answered immediately. No delay. No hesitation. Reconstruction cycle. The lights in the room brightened suddenly. Too bright. And for a second, I saw something impossible in the reflection again. Not the room. Not me. But a version of me standing in this exact room before I entered it. Calm. Still. Waiting. And then it smiled. At me. From inside the reflection. The panel beeped once, and the system voice said softly, "Caretaker transition phase beginning." The door behind me unlocked, but I didn't move, because I knew something worse than being trapped. The building wasn't keeping me out. It was keeping me in, so I wouldn't interrupt what came next. The first light flickered at 3:07 a.m. Not outside, inside. In a room that had no electricity for years. I was sitting in the caretaker's chair, staring at the empty hallway when it happened. A soft buzz, then a glow under the cracked door at the end of the corridor. I didn't move right away, because I knew something simple like that shouldn't have been possible here. The psychiatric estate was supposed to be dead. No staff, no patients, no power. Just stone walls and old records I was sent to clean up. But the light stayed on. And then another one. Farther down the hall. Clicking, clicking, clicking. One by one. Rooms waking up like they were remembering how to breathe. My throat went dry. I told myself it was wiring, old systems, maybe a backup line I didn't know about. But that didn't explain the second thing. The sound. Footsteps. Soft bare moving above me. On the floor that had collapsed 20 years ago. I stood up slowly, listening. The building creaked like it was adjusting itself around my fear. And then I heard it clearly. A voice. Not loud, not sharp. Just close enough to make my skin tight. Room check still pending. I froze, because that wasn't coming from the hallway. It was inside the wall. I took one step back, my hand gripping the desk. The file they gave me was still open. Old patient records, names crossed out, dates missing, pages that didn't match the official archive. But I remember one line from earlier. A note scribbled in red ink. Some patients never checked out. I thought it was metaphorical, until the lights started moving again. This time faster, like someone walking room to room, flipping switches. Click, click, click. My heart started beating too loud for the silence around me. I forced myself down the corridor. Every step felt like I was being watched from behind the walls. The lights now formed a trail leading toward the old isolation wing. The worst part of the building. Even the guards used to avoid it. Halfway down, I saw something new. A door that wasn't on any map. Metal, fresh, clean. Too clean for this place. It had a small glass panel. Behind it, light. Warm, stable. Like someone had just moved in. I didn't want to look, but I did. Inside the room was a chair, and on that chair sat a file. Open. Waiting. My name was written on the top page. Not printed. Handwritten. My breath stopped. I stepped closer without thinking, pressing my face near the glass. The page shifted slightly, as if something had just turned it. From inside the room, I backed away instantly. No, I whispered. No, no, no. But the hallway answered me. Not with silence, with movement. Behind me. Slow, measured, like someone reading my reaction. I turned. Nothing. Only darkness stretching back toward the main hall. But the lights were still on now. All of them. Every single room glowing like eyes open in the dark. And then I noticed something worse. The patient boards outside each room were updating. Names changing. Dates rewriting themselves. As if someone was correcting history in real time. My legs felt weak. I moved back toward the control office, hoping maybe I could shut power down manually. But the hallway stretched longer than before. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. It shouldn't have taken this long to cross. Yet the exit kept moving farther away. Like the building was refusing to let me leave. A whisper slid through the air again. Closer this time. You're late for rounds. I stopped completely, because I knew that voice. Or I thought I did. It sounded like mine, but older, tired, like it had been repeating the same sentence for years. I pressed my back against the wall. My hands were shaking now, and that's when I saw it. A shadow at the far end of the hall, standing perfectly still, watching me. No features, just shape, but it tilted its head slightly, like it recognized me. Then it stepped forward, and the lights above it flickered one by one as it moved. Not walking, gliding. I turned and ran. I didn't care where, just away. The doors I passed were now open, every room exposed. Empty beds, fresh sheets, warm air coming from inside them, as if someone had just left, or was about to return. I reached the control office and slammed the door shut behind me. Locked it, pressed my hand against my chest, trying to slow my breathing. But the lights in the room were already on. I hadn't turned them on. The switch was still down. Then the intercom crackled. a sound I didn't even know still worked. Static first, then a voice. Calm, professional, patient movement detected in Sector 4. My stomach dropped, because Sector 4 was sealed. Has been for years. I leaned closer to the speaker. No one is there, I said, my voice cracked. This place is empty. A pause. Too long. Then the voice responded. It has always been occupied. The intercom clicked off, and something heavy shifted right outside the door. Slow breathing. Not mine. I stepped back. My eyes locked on the floor. Dust was moving, like footprints forming in reverse, walking toward me. From outside the room, I grabbed the desk chair and pushed it against the door handle. My mind was racing now, trying to make sense of it. Hallucination, faulty wiring, stress. But none of those explained the records, or my name on that file, or the fact that the building now seemed aware I was inside it. The lights dimmed suddenly, then brightened again, like a slow blink. And in that blink, I heard something else. Pages turning, inside the walls, not in the office, in the structure itself. I pressed my ear against the wall without thinking, and I regretted it immediately, because there were voices, dozens, all speaking at once, soft, controlled, repetitive. Check-in complete. Medication cycle reset. Patient 18 remains active. Patient 18 remains active. That last line repeated longer than the others, over and over, until it became the only thing I could hear. My hands started shaking harder, because I realized something I didn't want to accept. There was no record of patient 18, at least not in the files I had seen. So why was it being monitored? And why did it sound like it was me? A sudden bang hit the door. Not loud enough to break it, but intentional, like a knock, a request. I stepped back slowly. The chair rattled against the handle. Another knock. Closer. Patient. Waiting. And then the voice returned. Not through the intercom this time. From the hallway behind the door. Right at ear level. Your shift is not finished. My blood went cold, because the voice wasn't outside anymore. It was inside the office. I turned slowly, and the room lights flickered one last time, revealing the reflection in the glass cabinet. A figure standing behind me, wearing caretaker clothes, same as mine, same posture, same tired face, but its eyes were wrong. Empty, like it had been awake longer than I ever could be. And as I stared at it frozen, it slowly raised its hand, pointing not at me, but at the file on my desk, the one I thought was empty when I arrived. It was open now. New page added, written in fresh ink. Patient 18, assigned to permanent rotation. My reflection smiled, but I didn't. The clock in the control room stopped at 3:07 a.m. Again, same second, same flicker of light, same cold air brushing the back of my neck like something just walked past me. But I had already lived this hour. I was sure of it, because I remember the file opening on its own. I remember the voice in the wall saying my shift wasn't finished. And I remember turning around, seeing myself smiling. Then the power cut out. Now it was back again. 3:07 a.m. Same frozen moment. Same silence pressing on my ears like wet cotton. I stepped back from the desk slowly, watching the clock like it might explain itself. My reflection in the glass cabinet didn't move right away. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Then it blinked. Not me. The reflection. My stomach tightened. I turned my head slightly, testing reality. The reflection stayed still for half a second longer than I did, like it was deciding whether to follow. Then it moved. Exactly like me. Too perfectly. I whispered, "This is not real." But my voice sounded delayed, like it had to travel through water before reaching me. A soft click came from behind the door. The same knock. The same pause. The same pressure of something waiting politely to be let in. I didn't open it. I didn't even move, because I already knew what was on the other side. Or worse, who? The caretaker version of me. The one from the file. The one that smiled when I didn't. Another knock. Closer this time. And then the lights flickered. For a split second, the office wasn't empty. It was occupied. Figures standing around me, motionless, watching. Patience. No, not patience. Records. Alive in the wrong way. Then everything snapped back to silence. Empty room. Just me. But the smell stayed. Antiseptic, old metal, something burned. I swallowed hard and backed toward the control panel. My hands were shaking now, but I needed proof. Something physical. Something that didn't reset every time the clock did. I checked the panel logs. They were all wrong. The timestamp kept repeating. 03:07 a.m. 03:07 a.m. 03:07 a.m. But the entries were changing. New lines appearing between old ones. As if someone was writing history while I was trapped inside it. One line caught my eye. Caretaker participation confirmed. My chest tightened. Participation in what? I leaned closer. Another line appeared beneath it. Night shift cycle ongoing. Subject remains compliant. Compliant. That word didn't feel like it belonged to me. I stepped back fast, knocking the chair over. The sound should have been loud. It should have echoed. But it didn't. It died instantly, like the building swallowed it. Then I heard it again. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Measured. Circling. Not approaching. Just repeating a path I couldn't see. I walked to the door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing at first. Then whispers. Multiple voices layered together, overlapping like broken recordings. Shift continues. Shift continues. Shift continues. And beneath it, something else. My voice. Calm. Tired. Explaining something I had never said before. You stopped noticing after the third loop. I pulled away instantly. No, I whispered. No, I haven't looped anything. But the lights flickered again, and I was standing in the hallway. I hadn't walked there. I just arrived. Same corridor. Same cracked walls. Same flickering bulbs. Except now there were marks on the floor. Fresh footprints. Mine. Leading backward. Like I had been walking for hours without remembering it. My throat tightened. I followed them slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last, like time itself had weight now. The footprints led me to the isolation wing. The part of the building I avoided. The part that felt like it didn't belong in the same reality as the rest of the estate. The door was already open. Of course it was. Inside, the lights were on. Warm. Stable. Impossible. And the rooms were filled. Not with people. With movement. Shadows sitting on beds, standing in corners, watching me enter. But when I blinked, empty again. I exhaled sharply. My mind was starting to fracture between what I saw and what disappeared. Then I noticed something on the wall. A clock, different from the others. It wasn't stuck at 3:07. It was counting backward. 0306, 0305, 0304. My pulse spiked. I ran toward it. As I got closer, I realized something worse. It wasn't counting time. It was counting me. Every second that passed, I felt something inside me rewind. Memory slipping. Thoughts undoing themselves. Like the building was deleting me, one moment at a time. No, I said again, louder this time. Stop it. The lights flickered violently. And suddenly, I was back in the control room. 3:07 a.m. Again. But now I was sweating. Now I was breathing too fast. Now I knew something had changed. Because the file on the desk was thicker. More pages than before. I hadn't added anything, but it had added itself. I opened it slowly, my hands barely obeying me. New page, same handwriting, but the tone was different now. Less like instructions, more like memory. Subject continues night shift cycle. I flip the page. Subject begins forgetting previous loops. Another page. Subject attempts resistance, unsuccessful. My heart started pounding harder, because I hadn't written any of this. So who did? I turned another page, and stopped breathing. There was a sketch, a rough drawing of the control room, me standing in it, but behind me, a figure. Same posture, same face, except it was labeled Caretaker Original. My mouth went dry. Original. Then what was I? A soft knock hit the door again. This time I didn't hesitate. I stepped back, because I knew something was going to enter whether I allowed it or not. The handle turned slowly. Not forced. Not broken. Just expected. The door opened, and I saw him. Me, standing there in the hallway, but not confused like before. Not panicked. Calm. Worn down. Like he had already accepted everything I hadn't. He stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind him. I told you, he said quietly. His voice was mine, but older, heavier. You stopped noticing after the third loop. I shook my head hard. No, this is not happening. I'm not you. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not cruel. Just tired. That's what I said too. My chest tightened painfully. I stepped back instinctively. He didn't follow. He just gestured toward the clock. Still 3:07 a.m. Do you know why it always stops there? He asked. I didn't answer. He continued anyway. Because that's the moment you agreed to stay. My mind froze. I never agreed to anything. He nodded slowly. You will. A silence stretched between us. Heavy. Wrong. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A key. Old. Rusty. Familiar in a way I didn't understand yet. He placed it on the desk. Door in the basement opens in the next cycle, he said. Try not to forget it this time. My stomach dropped. Basement. There was no basement access in the plans I had seen. But before I could ask, the lights flickered again. Everything tilted. My vision blurred. And suddenly, I was alone. The room empty. The chair overturned. The file closed. 3:07 a.m. frozen once more. But now, there was a key on my desk. Real, heavy, cold, and scratched into the metal was a number I hadn't noticed before. I stared at it for a long time because I finally understood something I didn't want to. This wasn't a shift, it was a cycle, and I wasn't working it. I was trapped inside it. The hallway lights outside flickered again, and somewhere far below the building, a door unlocked itself,